Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Naruto bastard son of Minato and Kushina. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. She felt like she was drowning beneath the heavy waves. She struggled, fought to escape the darkness and reach the surface, to again return to the light. Slowly, painfully, she awakened. Her eyes opened to a harsh too bright light. Her parched lips managed to whisper a name. Minato. A young girl gasped and then ran out of the room shouting. Lady Tsunade. She's awake. Kushina is awake. Shizune raced down the corridor desperate to find her sensei. In short order Tsunade was hovering over her dear friend performing a diagnostic jutsu and fighting back relieved tears. Oh thank Kami. Kushina, you very nearly died. It's been a whole week. You've been in a coma for 7 full days. I wasn't sure you would ever wake up. A week? Kushina's voice cracked. That's right, Tsunade said. Minato? She asked with a tiny bit of hope in her eyes. She knew what must have happened, but maybe. I'm sorry, Tsunade answered, crushing her faint hopes. He sacrificed himself to save the village. He was a great man and a true hero. She shut her eyes. Oh Minato. He was really gone then. Her one true love was gone. But there is someone else I love. Naruto, she asked with her scratchy voice. Where is Naruto? She saw Tsunade take on a fearful expression and Kushina felt fear stab into her heart. Is Naruto alright? He's fine Kushina, Tsunade assured. I've been checking on him regularly. He's perfectly healthy. He's in a private room not far from here under heavy Anbu guard. Guard? She asked worriedly. Her mind was still a bit fuzzy but that didn't sound right at all. Why is he under guard? Kushina. Tsunade hesitated but knew her friend had to be told and it was best if she heard it from her. While you were in your coma the council met and came to some decisions about your son. I did what I could, but you have to understand that the majority of them wanted him to be killed. Killed? Despite her weakness she suddenly sat up. She was rewarded with sudden pain racking her entire body. Careful. Tsunade gently took a hold of her and laid her back down onto the hospital bed. Kushina, your body is in a frail state right now. You mustn't overexert yourself or you could die. Why would they want to kill Naruto? She demanded with her rasping voice. He is Minato's son. He is sacrificing himself to make Kyuubi a prisoner. He is as much a hero as his poor father. Tsunade nodded sadly. I know that, and I agree with you. That little baby is a hero and the sacrifice he will have to make for the rest of his life is every bit as noble as the one Minato made. But I'm afraid most of the people in this village, ninja and civilian, don't see it that way. They don't see him as Minato's son, or even as an innocent baby, they consider him to be Kyuubi. Kushina looked up horrified. How could people be so stupid? How could they see a baby and honestly believe he was one of the Biju? I want to be with him. I want my son. Tsunade nodded. We'll get you in a wheelchair and take you to him. But Kushina, before we do that you need to know what the council decided. The Anbu guards had tried to deny Kushina entrance to her son's room. A few quiet words from Tsunade had convinced them otherwise. Kushina was sitting in a wheelchair, her baby in her arms. There were scars on his cheeks, but otherwise he seemed like a perfectly normal baby. He was sleeping peacefully in her arms. Tsunade and Shizune were in the room as well. They all looked up when the door opened and Sarutobi entered. He was in his Hokage robes and when he saw her he gave her a grandfatherly smile. Kushina, I am so happy to see you awake and alert. Kushina didn't return his smile. Instead she sent him a look of pure and absolute hatred. How could you? She asked in a voice that was little more than a whisper. Minato trusted you. The smile faded away from Sarutobi's face. He suddenly looked very old and very weary. I see you have been told about the council meeting and the decisions that were reached. He looked to Tsunade and Shizune. Could we have a moment alone please? Tsunade glanced at Kushina who gave her a slight nod. Come on Shizune. Let's get a quick bite to eat. The moment they were gone Kushina began to speak. Her voice was kept low but her anger was not hidden. How dare you? Hokage or not, what gives you the right to strip my son of what is his? He is Minato's rightful heir and will be head of the Namikaze clan one day. How dare you plan to take away his name and declare him an orphan? That was for his own protection, Sarutobi said quietly. You know how many enemies Minato had. If they knew he had a son the boy's life would be in constant danger. And no one knew if you would ever wake up. Making him an orphan seemed the wisest course, and it was the best one available. Well, I'm awake now, so that won't be a problem, will it? Since I am Minato's wife, that makes me Namikaze clan head until Naruto comes of age. I'll protect my son, and if you want to assign extra security I won't object. To her shock, rather than agree with her, she saw him slowly shake his head. I'm very sorry, Kushina, he told her. But I am afraid you will not be recognized as either Minato's widow or as Namikaze clan head. So far as Konoha is concerned, you were his lover and Naruto his illegitimate son. She stared at him, not believing what he was saying. I was his wife. We were married 1.5 years ago in Whirlpool. I know for a fact that Minato gave you a copy of the marriage documents. He did, Sarutobi admitted. I have taken the documents and put them in a safe place. When the time is right and Naruto is ready to make his claim, I will present them to the council and vouch for their authenticity. But I am afraid that for now I cannot make them public or acknowledge either you or Naruto as Minato's legitimate heirs. You can't do that, she whispered. How can you say such things? I thought you were Minato's friend. How can you turn your back on me and his son? Kushina, Sarutobi said patiently. If I acknowledged you as Minato's wife and legitimate head of Namikaze, you would be assassinated within the week. What? Too many people hold too much resentment against you. I am sorry, but to most you are a foreigner who seduced their beloved Yondaime. Were you from Konoha, things might be different. But if you were suddenly proclaimed Minato's widow, the ugly truth is most people would simply see you as a thief trying to steal the largest fortune in Konoha. Too many in this village would be too violently opposed to allowing a foreigner to claim the Namikaze fortunes and estates. Your life would be in severe danger, and if you were killed, what would happen to Naruto then? He would be an orphan and everyone would know there was a connection to Minato. He would be in even greater danger. I'll take my chances, she ground out. I have more faith in my katana right now than I do in you and all your Anbu and ninja. I'll tell everyone the truth and stake my claim to the Namikaze clan holdings. Please don't do that, Sarutobi asked. If you do, I will have no alternative but to publicly deny your claim. You would really do that? You would really deny me and my son what is ours? Yes, I am very sorry, Kushina, but given the climate of fear in the village right now, you would never be able to hold your claim. As I've said though, that may change in time, when Naruto is older. To hell with that. Why should my son be denied what is his? All I am asking for is what rightfully belongs to us. I am sorry, Kushina, but I cannot allow it, for your own safety as well as his. Then I'll tell everyone the truth. Sarutobi shrugged. No one will believe you. You have no evidence to back your claim. The only people who know the truth are you, me, Tsunade, and Jiraiya. I will not support you, and Jiraiya is not in Konoha. If Tsunade is the only one who backs your claim, it will look like she is acting to help a friend. The entire Uzumaki clan witnessed my marriage, she shot back. And the original marriage documents are in Whirlpool. I can present them and have 12 witnesses who know the truth. The old man sighed. I will declare the documents to be forgeries and everyone will assume that your family is lying to help you swindle the Namikaze fortune. All you will really accomplish is destroying any possibility that Naruto will inherit in the future. If I am forced to publicly declare Naruto is not Minato's legitimate heir, it will be impossible to reverse that in the future. Kushina, please try and understand that this is the best I can do. The council was adamant that your son either be killed or made a living weapon. It took every favor I had and all my skill just to convince a majority of them to allow him to be treated as an orphan. I was even able to pass a special law to prevent anyone who knows the truth about the Kyuubi from telling anyone else. That way he might at least have normal relationships with those of his own generation. How very generous of you, she said bitterly. You would have had Minato's only child grow up a poor orphan all alone in a village where he was hated. Tsunade told me his name is Uzumaki Naruto. You deny him even his rightful name. If his last name were Namikaze, that would defeat the entire effort to protect him from Minato's enemies. Sarutobi said reasonably. Sign, you are conscious he will of course not be an orphan. I will have a small house and pension provided for you and have Enbu protect him around the clock. I will also give you as many missions as you like to allow you to earn extra money. Though it may be difficult, the two of you should be all right until Naruto comes of age. Are you insane? Kushina asked him. You think I'd actually stay in a village where he'll be hated and where he is being robbed of his birthright? I'm taking my son back to Whirlpool with me. Kushina, I cannot. Don't you dare. She said sharply. You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. You say he is not Minato's legitimate heir, that he and I have no connection to Namikaze. Fine then, that also means you and this damn village have no authority over me. I am not a leaf nin. I am not even a citizen of Konoha since I apparently never married Minato. I am a ninja of Whirlpool. As for my son, who is an Uzumaki after all, he is a citizen of Whirlpool and part of my clan. You have absolutely no right to keep me and my son here against my will. That is true, Sarutobi answered carefully. And if you wish to leave with your son I will not try and prevent it. But please understand that if you leave I will no longer be able to protect you or Naruto. I think I'd rather do without your protection, Sarutobi. I do have one request though. All my private belongings are in the Namikaze mansion. I trust I will be allowed to get my property before I go? He nodded sadly. Of course, though you will not be permitted to take anything that belongs to the Namikaze clan. Just so you know, the estates have been placed in trust and sealed. No one will be allowed to use them. That specifically included the jutsus in the private library. I understand, wouldn't want the whore from Whirlpool making off with the family silverware. Kushina, get out, she said coldly. I think we understand each other just fine, old man. Nodding, he turned to leave. I am sorry, I honestly did the best that I could. Yes, and wouldn't Minato be proud if only he could see what you've done? Sarutobi lowered his eyes in shame. He really had done all he could for her and for Naruto. But he was still ashamed that it was so much less than they deserved. It was 3 days before Kushina recovered enough to leave the hospital. When she did so, she had Naruto in her arms and Tsunade and Shizune at her side. She was in her red and black bodysuit with her katana in its sheath on her back. She had a full set of kunai, shuriken, and explosive notes in her possession. She was glad to be so fully armed. The way people were staring at her and her child, she thought she might have to fight her way through. Along with Tsunade and Shizune, she had 4 squads of Anbu escorting her from the village to the mansion. People understood that Anbu always meant business, and whatever their feelings, the common folk maintained enough sense to keep a safe distance. That didn't prevent them from staring with those hateful, unforgiving eyes. It also didn't keep the occasional fool from shouting, whore, or monster, or demon. Seeing so much hatred being directed at her and her child, she longed to take out her katana and give them something to really fear. If you only had one neck, I'd hack it through. When they reached the Namikaze estate, they saw a seal on the gate. 2 Anbu escorted her, Naruto, and Tsunade onto the grounds. Shizune and the rest of her escort waited at the gate. When they reached the mansion itself, she saw there were seals not only on the door but every last window as well. Inside the building was dark and quiet. The servants, of course, were long gone. The place had been so full of life and happiness not too long ago. They had spent their time getting Naruto's room ready and making plans for the baby. Though it had been delayed, she had finally brought Naruto home. But he would not be allowed to stay. All this is yours, my darling. Your father wanted you to live here and carry on his clan's name. This place and everything in it belongs to you. No matter what Sarutobi or anyone else says. They came to the master bedroom. If you don't mind, I'd rather not have 2 men looking while I sort through my panties. Kushina said pleasantly. The 2 Anbu looked at one another. One wore an owl mask and the other a ram's. The 2 men had plainly been expecting to go in with them. Finally, the one with the owl mask nodded. We'll wait right here, you have 15 minutes. Thank you so much, she said as she shut the door. Kushina instantly handed Naruto over to Tsunade. Pack up a bunch of my clothes, I don't care which. She whispered and hurried over to the far wall. What are you doing? Tsunade asked. Kushina pressed a concealed switch that looked like part of the window sill. Soundlessly, a hidden door within the wall slid open. I'm getting my son his legacy. She slipped into the hidden passageway and was gone. On the table in the private library, she hurriedly stacked what she could. She had gone to Minato's family den first, where he kept his family's jewels. He'd given all of them to her upon their marriage and told her the safe's location and combination. Inside was an ornate wooden jewelry box with 8 little drawers. Inside were rings and earrings studded with diamonds, rubies, emeralds and other precious stones. There was a diamond necklace with over 200 individual stones, all of them at least 2 carats. The necklace alone was worth 5 million ryu. The rest of the jewels combined might be another 3 million. She opened each of the little drawers and dumped the contents into a cloth sack on her belt. In the private library she retrieved all the family jutsu scrolls. She could sort them out later. But she made very sure that the one and only copy of the legendary Hiraishin no Jutsu was one of them. She placed them all on the table along with a couple photo albums that were also kept there. She then brought out a blank scroll with an ink jar and brush. She was a long way from being a seal master like Minato or Jiraiya. But her darling had taught her the basics of the art, and that was enough. She wrote down the necessary formula onto the blank paper. Then, using the bare minimum of chakra, she made a hand sign. Seal. Everything that had been on the table vanished. On the scroll new symbols appeared representing those objects. She rolled the scroll up tight and slipped it into her bodysuit between her stomach and her body armor. With that done, she hurried back to the secret passage. They left the mansion with 2 large packs stuffed with clothes and with their escort none the wiser. From the estate they were headed straight to the gate. As they passed the Hyuga estate, Kushina glanced at it. Hiyashi had been Minato's closest friend and she considered him and his wife to be dear friends as well. But neither of them had visited her in the hospital. They had done nothing to try and help her or her son. She was left with no choice but to conclude that like everyone else in Konoha they had decided to abandon her now that Minato was gone. All along the way to the gate she encountered more of the same ugly looks and hateful shouts. Everyone only made her that much more eager to get back to Whirlpool and her clan. You know you two don't have to escort me, Kushina said. Don't worry, Tsunade answered with a grin. It's not like I want to stay in this village any more than you do. Besides, it's been a long time since I've been to Whirlpool, it'll be fun. Thank you, both of you. She looked at them gratefully. It means a lot to me to know that at least the 2 of you still support me. As they neared the gate, Tsunade smiled. Well, it looks like we're not the only ones. There waiting for them were 2 young teens. One with an Anbu mask in the form of a dog in his hand. Kakashi, Rin, thank you for seeing me off, Kushina said. I'm sure Minato would be grateful to know his students came to see me in Naruto. Rin came up to her, tears in her eyes. Is it true? Are you really leaving for good? Kushina nodded. With the way things are, I think it's for the best. Naruto won't be treated fairly in this place. In Whirlpool he'll be loved and respected, and he'll have a huge family. But it's not fair. The girl cried out. She looked lovingly at the little baby. No, it's not, Tsunade said. But for that you can blame the people of this village. Their own cruelty and heartlessness have forced this situation. Kakashi slowly stepped forward until he was shoulder to shoulder with Rin. His Hite was covering his left eye while his right was looking down at the baby's face. He looks just like Sensei, he said quietly. How can they hate him? I don't know, Kushina said. But they do. Kakashi looked up from Naruto's face to Kushina's. Kushina, I want to make a request. Please let me come with you. What? Rin gasped and turned to him. Kakashi, you can't do that. She'd right, Tsunade said. Shizune and I have been given special permission to travel as we please from the old man. You can't leave the village without permission, you know that. If you do you'll be a missing nin. They'll send hunter nins after you to track you down. Rin said fearfully. Kushina smiled gently. Thank you, Kakashi. I truly appreciate the offer and I know Minato would be very proud of you. But I can't ask you to make such a sacrifice for me. Kakashi calmly produced a piece of paper and handed it to Kushina. The Hokage has granted me permission to resign my ninja status and leave the village. That produced gasps not only from Rin, Tsunade, and Shizune but from their Enbu escort as well. Kakashi was only 15 but he was already becoming a Black Ops legend, the famed copy ninja. Kushina did not gasp or make a fuss. She took the document and read it silently. It was indeed a letter from the Hokage with his seal and signature releasing Kakashi from his status as a ninja and permitting him to leave the village. Why would Sarutobi do this? I told him that I could no longer serve this village, he answered calmly. In my life there have been 2 men who I truly admired and wanted to be like, my father and my sensei. One was scorned by the people and ninja of this village until he was finally driven to commit seppuku. The other sacrificed himself for the sake of Konoha, only to have his lady love and his son hated and driven out. He pulled off his Hite, careful to keep his left eye shut. So far as I'm concerned this village does not deserve my loyalty. If you'll let me, I want to help protect my sensei's son. I want to try and be a role model for him just like Minato-sensei was for me. But whatever happens, I will no longer serve this ungrateful village." Taking a kunai, he slowly and deliberately slashed the metal on his headband, neatly cutting the leaf symbol in two. "Kakashi," Rin looked at him horrified. "You can't, I'm sorry Rin, I really am," he told her gently as he replaced the now slashed hite. "But I can't serve a village that treats its heroes this way." Kushina looked at him. "If you are absolutely sure, then you are more than welcome to join me. My clan and village would welcome you." "Thank you Kushina-san." 3 days of travel had brought them to the edge of Whirlpool territory. Whirlpool was a small country stuck between Earth and Whirlpool. It was really a city-state based around the ninja village that was located on the coast. It was a cold, gloomy, wet place where it rained almost every morning and where the grass would grow as high as your shoulder. Whirlpool was perhaps a quarter the size of Konoha with a complement of about 400 ninja. The Uzumaki were considered one of the strongest of the clans based there. They were known for their swordsmanship and their ferocity in battle. There was an old saying in Whirlpool that everyone knew: "Don't piss off the Uzumaki." As they made camp, Kushina got done feeding her son and sang him a lullaby that soon had him asleep. He was such a good-natured baby. He hardly ever cried or fussed. He actually seemed to enjoy riding on her back through the trees. "You seem to be in a really good mood," Tsunade noted once Naruto was asleep. Kushina smiled. "I'm going to see my family tomorrow and I get to show my parents their grandson. Of course I'm in a good mood. Whirlpool may not be much compared to Konoha in a lot of ways, but I know Naruto will be happy there. He'll grow up surrounded by the clan, safe and loved just like I did." Kushina looked about to see Kakashi and Shizune a little ways off. "Listen Tsunade, there's something I've been meaning to ask you about," Kushina said quietly. "What?" Tsunade dropped her voice to match. "Sarutobi told me Jiraiya wasn't in the village. But I noticed that some of the flowers in my hospital room were from him." It hadn't been hard to notice, there hadn't been many flowers. Tsunade looked a little uncomfortable as she answered. "He returned to the village 3 days after the attack. Just in time to attend Minato's funeral. He came to visit you, but of course you were in a coma. He also came to see Naruto. He spoke with me about what had happened and about Naruto's situation and your condition. I told him I didn't know when or if you would ever wake up. He left the next day." "He just left?" Kushina asked with a frown. "Was he on a mission? Was there some reason why he left so quickly? Did he plan to come back?" Tsunade shook her head. "I don't know. He didn't tell me anything, the next day he was just gone. The impression I had though was that he didn't know how to handle losing Minato. He really loved him like a son." "I know that," Kushina said. "And if he needed time to grieve I could understand. But he is also Naruto's godfather. He should have been there to watch over him even if he was grieving." "You know I'm usually not one to defend that pervert," Tsunade said. "But losing Minato and not even being there to try and help really hit him hard. Maybe he has earned a little pass. At least withhold judgment until you can talk to him." "I suppose that would be fair," Kushina admitted. "Anyway, I'm sure my mom will make a feast for us once we get there." "How long can you and Shizune stay?" "We'll definitely stay a few days, maybe a week." Tsunade grinned fondly. "I seem to recall there are a few gaming dens in Whirlpool." "Well, try to not lose all your money. Your gambling is really starting to get a little out of hand." "No need to worry, I'm rich after all. It's not like I could ever lose my entire family fortune. With your luck I wouldn't be so sure of that." The next day they arrived a little before noon. The walls. Kushina stood rooted to the spot staring out. She didn't think she could move. Whirlpool had been surrounded by 30-foot-high walls. They had always stood there guarding the village and all those who lived there. But they were gone now. They had been reduced to a jumble of stone blocks. She was standing on the east road that led from Waterfall into Whirlpool village. The road itself seemed to be the only thing still intact. "Kushina," Tsunade spoke and gently touched her arm. "Come on, we have to check on your home." "Home," she mumbled. "Yes, home, come on." She hurried towards the shattered wall. "Oh please Cammy, just let my family be all right. I don't care if the house is gone as long as they're all right." Entering the village itself was even worse than seeing the destruction from a distance. There was not one building left standing, not one. It was hard to even be sure what was street and what used to be houses. There were bricks scattered everywhere. Here and there were people rooting through the rubble trying to salvage anything they could. No one offered to help them. They would look up to stare with blank empty eyes and then return to their labor. The air was thick with the sweet sticky smell of rot. Walking through the village, they were literally walking through a graveyard. Most of the bodies buried within the demolished buildings would never be recovered. The wreckage would be their final resting place. Kushina didn't let herself think about any of it. Her mind was focused on just one thought: getting home. Obviously there had been survivors. Even if the Uzumaki compound had been flattened, surely her family had survived. Most of them were ninja after all, born survivors. Surely they would be all right. She was running through the streets until she came to a cliff. She was forced to stop. There was nothing in front of her but the ocean. Looking out on the blue water, she felt her body begin to shake. "No," she whispered. "No, oh Kami, no, 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 no." Her whispers grew into screams. "Kushina." Tsunade grabbed and shook her. "Stop it, you're making Naruto cry." Kushina stared at her. "It's gone, it's really gone." "I know dear, I know," Tsunade said, sympathetic. She'd been to the Uzumaki compound. As she recalled, it was about 1.5 miles into what was now a bay. The cliff where they were standing had no docks of piers. There was rubble from houses right up to the edge. It looked as if part of the village had simply fallen into the sea. "What am I supposed to do now?" Kushina wailed. "I don't know," Tsunade told her. "But whatever it is, we'll figure something out." As Kushina continued to weep, a man approached them. "Kushina? Is that you?" Kushina looked up at the gray-haired man. He was wearing the same type of black and red bodysuit she had. On his back was a katana. She recognized him. "Uncle Saishu." "Oh, thank Kami." She ran to him. He opened up his arms and embraced her. "Oh uncle, then Kami, I'm glad you're all right. Did you get my letter?" he asked her. "No." She looked up at him. "What letter? What happened here? Where are the others? Mother? Father? Temjin?" The man slowly and regretfully shook his head. "There are no others, Kushina, we are the only Uzumaki left. I only survived because I was out of the village when the Kyuubi came." "The Kyuubi? The Kyuubi did this?" Kushina asked, not believing it. "But the Kyuubi was never in Whirlpool," Tsunade argued. "No, but he created an earthquake, which is what did all of this. He destroyed us without even coming here." Saishu told them. "I can believe that," Kakashi said. "I was in the field trying to slow it down and I saw the unbelievable power of the thing. It could flatten a mountain with a swipe of one of its tails." With all this going on, Naruto began to cry again. Saishu finally noticed the newborn. "Kushina, is this your son?" She nodded and carefully took Naruto into her arms to show him to her uncle. "Uncle Saishu, this is my son Naruto." Even surrounded with such tragedy, the man smiled down at the squalling child. "He's a beautiful baby, and he looks just like his father. Is Minato here with you? For that matter, why did you come here if you hadn't gotten my letter yet? I thought your parents were going to visit you after the child was born. Your mother said she was going to stay with you in Konoha for a few months." "A lot has happened, uncle," she told him wearily. "Can we get out of here? I don't want to have to look at this anymore." They left the village and went out into some nearby hills. Over a quiet lunch of fish and some rice, they talked and shared information. Kushina hesitated to tell her uncle the truth about her son. Given what the Kyuubi had done, she feared he might resent him as the villagers did. But the bonds of clan and family were strong, and she trusted they would be more important than anything else. She also did not want to keep secrets from her only remaining relative. Saishu was shocked to learn Minato was dead and even more surprised to learn what was inside his grandnephew. But as Kushina had hoped, he did not turn away from her son as the villagers in Konoha had. To him, her son was family first and everything else second. She was also happy to see he shared her fury for Sarutobi and the villagers. "They have a weird idea about loyalty," Saishu said darkly. "They love the father but cast out the wife and son. They don't acknowledge me as his wife," she said bitterly. "To them I was nothing but a conniving whore, and Naruto is just an illegitimate bastard." "Blood is blood," Saishu replied. "Even if they didn't see you as his wife, they still should have at least recognized Naruto as his son." "They should have, but they don't, uncle," she said tiredly. "And since the original marriage documents are at the bottom of the ocean, there's nothing I can do to prove it." Eventually the conversation led to one inevitable topic. "So what do we do now?" Shizune asked. The others all looked at one another. "We could go back to Konoha," Shizune offered. I am sure the Hokage would take everyone back, and I'm sure Saishu would be welcome too. The village is short of ninja after all. No, Kushina said decisively. I won't have my son raised somewhere people will hate him. We can stay right here, Saishu said. I was planning on salvaging whatever I could from the compound. It won't be easy, it may take years, but… No, Kushina cut him off. Uncle, how long do you think it will be before the rock nins swarm in to take over? There's nothing to stop them. Saishu frowned at her. We are the last Uzumaki, we can't abandon our ancestral home. My home is wherever my son is. Our duty is to restore the clan, uncle, not guard a piece of ground. Especially not if there are damn rock nins on it. Do you know what they'll do if they even suspect who Naruto's father is? We can't leave Whirlpool, he said stubbornly. My son and I aren't staying, she said flatly. As clan head, I am ordering you to come with us. Saishu lifted a feathery eyebrow. Your clan head? My father was the clan head and I am his only remaining child, by tradition that makes me head of the Uzumaki. Saishu looked at her and considered. Please don't abandon me, uncle, she said quietly, her tone pleading. You and Naruto are my only family now. Looking heartbroken, he nodded. I won't, I'll protect you and my little grandnephew. It's just hard to leave though. I know, she said. I loved this place too, but what matters is family. We'll find a new home for the Uzumaki. Which brings us back to the question of where do we go from here? Tsunade said. Tsunade, maybe it's time for you and Shizune to strike out on your own. I appreciate all you've done, but there's no need for you to do any more. Actually, since you don't have a home right now, I thought that Shizune and I would stay with you. After all, someone has to give my little godson checkups and take care of his health. Kushina's lips quirked into an amused grin. Godson? She asked. I don't seem to recall offering you that job. If that pervert is good enough to be a godfather, I am more than good enough to be a godmother. Fine, but you have to stop gambling. Don't push it, Tsunade warned. As entertaining as all this is, Kakashi spoke up. Where do we go from here? I want to get as far from earth and fire as possible. Kushina said. We'll go south. South? Kakashi asked. Anything more specific? Not right now, Kushina said. Kakashi shrugged. South it is then. He was asleep when the guards came for him. Up on your feet, one of them yelled. Knowing he would be kicked if he didn't get up, he rose as fast as he could. The manacles clinked as they always did. There was a metal bar that kept his wrists a foot apart at all times, preventing him from making hand signs. It made using a pick and shovel harder, but the guards didn't seem to care. On his feet he was that, along with two of the regular guards, there was stranger. He wasn't dressed like a prison guard or even like a ninja. He wore big baggy pants and a buttoned-down white shirt and vest. He looked like a well-to-do merchant. The stranger looked closely at him. Is he the one? Are you sure? Yes, this is definitely him, one of the guards said. You don't look like you're worth 5 million. The stranger said, taking another close look. Huh? The prisoner said. Get him in my wagon, the merchant told the two guards. Grabbing him by his arms, they began to haul him out of the prison camp. The other prisoners were awake but knew better than to stir or draw any attention to themselves. The guards were dragging him out in the middle of the night. Whatever the reason, he doubted it could be good. Normally the prisoners were simply worked to death, no matter how long it took. Most men died within a year or two. But he was a hard case. He was going to live on, if only to spite them. He had already survived. Was it 6 years of 7? He wasn't sure, but it was longer than any of the other prisoners. Maybe the guards were sick of him and had decided to just cut his throat rather than keep working him into the grave. If they're going to kill me, I wonder if I should say thank you. He began to really wonder what was going on as they headed for the prison camp's main gate. He had not stepped through there since his original arrival in this hellhole. He didn't believe he would ever pass through it again. Every single morning he got up, was fed a little rice and water, and was then marched into the stone quarry and worked until dark. Then he would be given some rice and water for dinner and marched back to the lodge where he would sleep with the others. When he died, he still wouldn't leave this place. They would just chuck him in one of the old quarry pits to rot. If they were going to kill him, they wouldn't go to the trouble of taking him outside the camp. As they neared the gate, the captain of the night watch came out. The merchant went over to him and something changed hands. The merchant then approached the two guards who were on the gate. He handed something to each of them and the gate was soon opened. A little ways outside he saw a covered wagon with a driver and 4 horses hitched up. The guards got him to the back of the wagon and hauled him up into it. There was an iron rod sticking out of the wagon floor. The guards took out a lock and neatly attached his bar to it. With that done, the two guards jumped back down and held out their hands. The merchant slapped a thick wad of Ryu notes into each palm. "Remember," the man said unhappily. "He died. He's gone." "Sure," one of them said happily. "Prisoners die all the time," said the other one said as he made his money disappear. As the guards headed back to the camp, the merchant looked at him with a very unhappy frown. "You have any idea how expensive it is to make a ninja slave disappear? If you were just a normal man, it wouldn't have cost a quarter as much. You had better be worth it, that's all I've got to say. If the offer turns out to be a trick, I'll cut you up and feed you to my dogs." "Who the hell are you?" the prisoner asked, not understanding at all what was going on. The man let out a sour laugh. "Your savior, obviously." With that, he slammed shut the back of the wagon. Not long after that, he felt the wagon lurch into motion. He spent the next 15 days traveling chained up on the back of the wagon. Other men would have considered the experience a horror. That would only prove that most people had no idea what horror really was. Each morning he was allowed out to use the facilities and be given a quick shower, usually by having a bucket of water splashed on him. He was then allowed to eat. The food was usually just rice and tea, but he was also given some fish and bread too, and he could have as much food as he wanted. For the first time in years, he actually stopped being hungry. They would then lock him back into place on the wagon, but they would give him a bucket of clean water and a ladle so he would not get too thirsty. When the wagon stopped for the night, they would feed him again. Rice, bread, vegetables, even meat. It was plain fare, but to him it was a feast, and again he could eat all he wanted. He asked the merchant and the driver why they were feeding him so well. The man had laughed. "After everything I've spent on you up till now, the last thing I want is for you to die of starvation on the way there." "And just where are we going?" the prisoner had asked. "River country," the man had answered. The prisoner had done a lot of traveling back when he was still a ninja working for his village. But he had never once gone to river country. "Why? What's in river country?" the man had laughed. "Your new owners, of course." Along with getting fed and cleaned, he'd even got some new clothes as well as a haircut and a shave. When he saw his reflection in the bucket, he actually looked like the man he'd been when he'd been captured. Oh, he looked thinner and older, but at least he looked what people called presentable. After 15 days of travel, they came to the city of Kiyosu. When the back of the wagon opened, the prisoner saw that along with the merchant and driver there were about 15 big ugly-looking guards. "We're here," the merchant announced. "Now either I sell you or I feed you to my dogs." With that, a couple of the guards pulled him down off the wagon. Here turned out to be a bounty station. Could I have a bounty on me after all this time? It hardly seemed possible. And who in their right mind would pay to kill him or imprison him when he was already trapped in hell? He didn't need to wait long. As soon as he arrived, the man sent out a messenger. Not long after that, his owners arrived. Two people dressed in brown robes with hoods over their heads. He couldn't guess who they were, but by the nervous way the merchant and his men were looking in their direction, he'd have bet anything they were ninja. The merchant licked his lips and cautiously stepped forward. "He is the one you want?" "Yes," a woman's voice answered immediately. The prisoner was surprised to learn one of them was a woman. And there was something just a little familiar about that voice. "Then our bargain?" the man asked nervously. "Here," the woman reached into her robe and produced something, then tossed it to him. It sparkled in the sunlight. "Now let him go." The man grabbed it with both hands. He quickly produced a jeweler's lens and studied it. The prisoner thought it was a diamond necklace. "It's real," the merchant practically sang. He looked up at the two in robes and smiled at them. "I don't know what you want him for, but you've made the single worst bargain I've ever heard of." "No," the woman's voice was iron. "He's worth 1,000 times what I paid you. Now let him go." The man made the necklace disappear and nodded, shouting to his guards to let him go. For just a second the prisoner thought about making a break for it. But the manacles were still on his wrists. He doubted he could outrun the guards, never mind the ninja. Taking a deep breath, he walked towards the two figures in their hooded cloaks. "Just who are you people and what do you want with me?" "We'll tell you in a minute," the woman said. "Just as soon as we are inside," a man's voice said. The prisoner looked at him. That voice was very familiar. The woman placed a hand on his arm and made a hand sign. The two of them disappeared in a swirl of wind and mist. The other one made a similar gesture and disappeared as well. When they reappeared, it was in a small room in some hotel. The instant that happened, the woman pressed herself to his chest and began shaking. "Urusai," she cried. "What?" Uzumaki Shinzo gasped. "Kuki?" Reaching up with his still chained hands, he pulled down her hood. There was the crying visage of a young woman with red hair and green eyes. She was no longer the 12-year-old he remembered, but there was no mistaking it was the same face. "Oh Kami, it's really you, Kuki." "So it is." The man lowered his own hood. "Welcome back, nephew." "Uncle Saishu," he said happily. "How did you manage to rescue me?" Kushina smiled up at her big brother and wiped her tears. "Well, it just so happens that loud-mouthed Jin was talking about a trip he'd made up to Iwa to sell prisoners. He mentioned that there was a ninja prisoner from Whirlpool still working one of their camps. He revealed he was an Uzumaki. When I heard that, I asked him if there was any way he could help me get you out of there." Saishu laughed. By which she means she put her katana to the little merchant's neck and said she would slice him open if he didn't help her get you back. "I told him I'd give him a necklace worth millions if he brought you here," she said. He looked at his little sister. "How did you get a necklace worth millions? Everything our clan owns wouldn't come to even $500,000. A lot of things have happened in the last 6 years, brother." Kushina told him. "You better sit down. Oh, but to start with, I'm a widow with a little boy, so that makes you an uncle." He gaped at her. "My little sister has a kid? I'm an uncle?" He sat down. "There's a lot more, not all of it good. A couple months ago the nine-tailed Kyuubi came. Shinzo spent most of that first night of freedom listening to all the ways life had changed. Things would clearly not be easy, but after all he had endured he would manage. And he would do everything in his power to restore his clan and protect the precious few family members he had left." Lord Isamu was riding in his wagon, pleasantly dozing in the hot summer sun. He was heading back to the little cottage where he kept his favorite mistress. Surrounding the carriage were 20 heavily armed men of his personal bodyguard. As he enjoyed the pleasant afternoon ride, he imagined being called by the daimyo to serve in his cabinet. It would not only be a great honor, but he would be in a position to make powerful friends who could help him increase his holdings. Isamu knew he was not a brilliant man. He also knew he was far from hard-working. He liked to spend his days eating, sleeping, and making love to his many women. But he had one skill that he knew made up for all the rest. He knew how to make money. His province of River Country produced more tax revenue than any other. When it came to milking everything he could from his peasants, he was a real genius. Of course, all his special taxes and fees and mandatory contributions left most of his people barely enough to survive. Even the merchants and shopkeepers were poor. But what were they for but to help their lord? Delivering so much tax money to the daimyo each season earned him praise, and of course he kept a little extra for himself. He was certain he would be called to the capital soon. He was destined for great things. His pleasant daydream came to an abrupt end as the carriage was brought to a sudden halt. Outside he could hear his guards shouting and talking nervously. With annoyance he opened the carriage door and leaned his head out. "What's going on?" he demanded. "Why have we stopped?" The captain of his bodyguard turned to him and hurriedly bowed. "I apologize, Lord Isamu, but there are 2 men standing in the road." Isamu looked. Sure enough, there were. They were dressed all in black except for a wide stripe of dark red that ran down along the side of their clothing. He could see both men were armed. He sent his captain an annoyed look. "Well, what are you waiting for? There are only 2 of them." The captain looked at him and nervously licked his lips. "I believe these men may be ninja. It may be wise to turn around and escape while we can." "Are you a coward? Just what the hell am I paying you for? Are you telling me all 20 of you can't handle 2 ninja?" River Country had no ninja village of its own. As such, the local nobility didn't truly understand the gap between ninja and ordinary soldiers. No matter how skilled or well-armed, no ordinary swordsman was a match for a trained ninja. And depending on their ability level, even a 10-to-1 advantage might not be enough. "If you order me to attack them, I will do so, Lord Isamu. But I suspect those men may be far more dangerous than they seem." "Kill them or kill yourself," he said indifferently. The captain bowed once again. He was honor-bound to obey his lord's commands. Pulling out his own sword, he shouted, and the men all joined him as he rushed down the road to attack the 2 interlopers. For their part, the 2 men did nothing at all. They did not speak, they did not try to run, they didn't even draw their weapons. They merely stood there and watched until the guards got to within 20 yards. That was when they stepped on the tripwire, detonating the explosive notes. Isamu watched the deafening explosion from a safe distance. His captain and several of the guards were blown to bits while the rest were knocked to their feet or stumbled about disoriented. That was when the two men finally drew their swords. They leapt over the smoking crater that was in the middle of the road now. With incredible speed their swords flashed in the afternoon sun and men began to scream as they were hacked down. Isamu gulped as he saw his guards being killed like so many spring lambs. He was about to yell at his driver to get him out when he saw a wickedly sharp blade pressed to his throat. "And where do you think you're going?" a woman's pleasant voice said in his ear. "You really should have listened to your guard, he had the right instinct. Not that it would have saved you." With exaggerated care he turned his face to see a beautiful red-haired woman with stunning green eyes. She was dressed like the two men in the road. She was quite stunning. Under different circumstances he would have taken her for a lover. "Do you know who I am?" "Lord Isamu, ruler of Ikoku province," she answered simply. "Soon to be former ruler. Don't be hasty. I can have a very large ransom paid for my safe return." The woman shook her head. "We don't deal with ransoms, too much trouble. We prefer bounties, they're much more straightforward. Whatever the bounty I will double it. My son will gladly pay any price to save me." The woman began to laugh and Isamu got very cold feeling in his belly. "What is so funny?" "My dear Lord Isamu," the woman answered politely. "Who do you think put the bounty on you in the first place?" Seeing the ridiculous look of surprise on his face, Kushina decided it was enough. She drew her sword back and sliced down into his neck. Her katana cut clean through the meat and bone. His head came neatly off with just the one cut. The only person to survive their ambush was the wagon driver. After putting Isamu's head in a sack and relieving him of his purse and rings, the wagon driver had been allowed to go untouched. He turned the wagon around with the rest of Lord Isamu's body lying inside. No doubt the son would make a huge show of grief and give his daddy a wonderful funeral. The three of them were flying through the trees heading back home. "You know, sometimes this work really does sicken me," Kushina said. "I mean, a son putting out a contract on his own father? Disgusting. Disgusting or not, we still took the job though, didn't we, Kuki?" Shinzo said. "And it's not like we'll turn up our noses when we collect the bounty." "I know that," Kushina snapped. Her uncle turned his head to look her way. "What's wrong, Kushina? You are the one who chose this job. It went exactly as planned and none of us even have a scratch. Why are we always performing assassinations?" she demanded. "That lord may have had it coming, but I doubt his son will be any better. And we had to kill 20 men who hadn't done anything but pick the wrong employer. You can't expect to assassinate important people without having to deal with guards," Saishu said reasonably. "You have to know that by now." "I accept it, so do Shinzo and Kakashi. But why is it the only thing we ever seem to do?" "We're mercenaries and bounty hunters, Kuki," Shinzo said. "We don't exactly have a wide selection of jobs to choose from. Investigations, police and guard work. Most people prefer to send that kind of stuff to one of the ninja villages. The only reason we get as much work as we do is because assassination is always the most expensive mission for ninja, and we'll do it for about half what a proper village would charge. If you don't want us to perform assassinations anymore, then you won't," Saishu said. "There are other options. We can start taking some of the bounties on recapturing escaped prisoners instead. That will take us twice as long and we won't make even a tenth as much." Shinzo objected. "It will be fine," Saishu said. Shinzo looked at his little sister. "Is that what you want?" She frowned. They could stop doing assassinations and concentrate on capture bounties instead. The problem was Urusei had it right. Their income would take a severe drop. After trading away her diamond necklace to pay for her brother's freedom, she'd been forced to part with several more rings and gems in order to establish themselves here. She still had some of the jewels stashed away, but she wanted to hold onto them for any future emergency. Money was absolutely vital to her plans for restoring the Uzumaki and helping her son take back what was his. They needed to have as much revenue as possible. "No," she said slowly. "I suppose not. It's just that, well, what?" Kushina looked at her brother. "Is this all we are now? Just a bunch of killers for hire, ready to even help a lordling commit patricide so long as the price is right? I mean, I know assassination is part of a ninja's duties, but shouldn't there be more? I never felt like that when we had our clan. We assassinated people, sure. And we did some other things I'm not proud of, especially during the war. But I always felt we had honor. I always felt like the Uzumaki stood for something and we had a greater purpose. Shinzo nodded slowly. Of course we did, he spoke sadly. We were the guardians of Whirlpool. We served and protected the village and its people, that was our mission, that was our purpose. Then what are we now? She asked. Mercenaries trying to re-establish our clan. He answered. That's our mission now and earning money is just a part of that. We can't be squeamish about what we have to do if it means protecting the people we love. Kushina carefully nodded. Urusei had a point. Everything they were doing was for Uzumaki and for the precious people in her life. She couldn't refuse to do what she had to even if it did make her sick at times. But we need a greater mission. The Uzumaki need to be guardians again, protectors. Otherwise the next generation will grow up thinking all we really are just a bunch of mercenaries. Right there and then Kushina came to an important decision. Family meeting when we get back, she announced. Her uncle and her brother both looked at her. Now what are you up to? Shinzo asked suspiciously. You'll find out when everyone else does. Here you are, Jin said politely as he handed over a nondescript paper bag. 200,000 ryu. Thanks, Shinzo said as he took the money and slipped it beneath his bodysuit. When they'd returned to Kyosu, Kushina had asked him to take the head to the bounty station and collect the bounty. Shinzo grunted his agreement. Even after 5 years of taking bounties and having to work with Jin, he still couldn't stand the little worm. He might have been the one to rescue him, but it had only been for the money. He would have fed him to the dogs just as easily. Do say hello to the kids for me. He grunted and left. On the outskirts of town was a large house surrounded by a big yard and fence. Part of the house looked newer than the rest. They'd had to add on to provide room for everyone who lived here. When he walked in though the front door he called out, "I'm home." He was answered with a couple excited squeals. Tearing out of the living room came a 4-year-old and 3-year-old, Michio and Minori, his sons. "Daddy," they cried in unison. "There are my boys." He happily reached down and picked them both up. 5 years ago. You need to get married and start having kids, Kushina told him. Kids? Married? What are you talking about? I just got out of an Iwa prison camp. I never even thought I'd see a woman again. I'm not interested in anything but having a little bit of fun. Listen Urusei, this isn't just about you having fun. Counting my son there are only 4 Uzumaki left. And since I expect him to take his father's name one day there are really just the 3 of us to restore the clan. That means for the good of the clan you're going to have to get married and start fathering the next generation of our family. Uncle Saishu certainly can't do it. Hey, an indignant Saishu cried out. What does that mean? Kushina looked at him with an apologetic grin. No offense uncle but, well, you are old. I'm not that old. Anyway, she turned back to her brother. The clan needs you to have children, legitimate children with a wife. Shinzo frowned at her. He couldn't deny the logic or that he had a duty that superseded his own personal wants. But having only just gotten his freedom back it seemed awfully unfair to have her fitting him out for a different sort of chain. What about you? What about me? She asked. You're 19, healthy, and obviously able to have kids if you have a son already. I assume you'll be helping me repopulate the clan. Nope, she said with a smile. The only man I'll ever love is gone. I won't have a child with anyone else. But, I said I won't be having any more children. So the burden falls on you. It's easier for a man to have kids anyway. It's just too bad polygamy is illegal. Less than 2 months later he was married to Aoi. Welcome home dear, his wife came out to greet him. She was a lovely woman with dark hair, honey-colored eyes, full breast and wide hips. Kushina had found her for him and practically forced them together. Not that he'd objected too much. She had a very gentle and loving nature and he had won her over to him with ease. She'd come from a poor background and so her family had been happy to see her married off to someone who was of a ninja clan and had at least some wealth. Perhaps best of all she had chakra coils, though they were far too weak for her to mold them into any sort of jutsu. But the fact that she had chakra practically guaranteed all their children would be able to use jutsu. She was everything a man could hope for in a wife and mother. She was faithful, loving, kind, devoted, and committed. And if there was no great passion between them they at least liked each other and lived happily together. As she gave him a soft kiss he noted the swell in her belly. Their first daughter was due in about 3 months. Where's everyone? He asked as he put his boys down. Saishu is in his room. Kakashi is out training somewhere. Shizune is working at the hospital. Tsunade took Naruto out a while ago, and Kushina went out looking for him. Tsunade took Naruto out with her? He said nervously. Please tell me she didn't take him to that place again. She didn't say where she was going. She took him there then, he said with certainty. Well, at least Kushina should find them pretty quick. Winner! A man cried out. All around the table people cheered and applauded. Tsunade was all smiles as she saw the pile of chips on the craps table get bigger. She quickly moved a couple stacks of the plastic chips to a spot on the table. All right dear, Mama needs a new pair of shoes. You do, godmother? Naruto asked as he took the dice from her. That's just a saying, sweetheart, Tsunade said happily. She was never happier than when she was winning. Actually, I want you to roll a hard 8. That's 2 4s, right? It sure is. What a smart boy you are. Naruto smiled proudly. He really loved when godmother brought him to this casino place to let him play with her. He always got a lot of cheers and attention from the people here, and he always had fun. Here goes. He shook the dice in both hands and let them go. They tumbled all the way to the end of the table and bounced to a stop, 4 little black dots on each. Winner! The dealer called out and there were fresh cheers and applause. Tsunade smiled even wide as still more chips were added to what she had. Naruto-kun, with your luck and my knowledge we'll end up owning this place. She was looking over the table deciding on her next bet when a familiar killer intent hit her. She sighed without even turning around. Hello Kushina. As they returned to the house, Kushina had her riding on her back and Tsunade still pleading. I'm telling you, if you'd just let me take him to the Isle of Torikai for a week we'd never need to work again. Kushina sent her a hostile glare. Damn it Tsunade, how many times have I told you I do not want my son gambling? But he's a natural. I've never seen anyone with such great gambling instincts of such good luck at the tables. If you'd let me bring him to the casinos on Torikai we'd make enough to buy the place. I don't care. I don't want him gambling. But it's fun mama, Naruto said innocently. And it always makes godmother happy. I know that Naruto-kun, his mother said patiently. But it's not something I want you to get used to. It's a bad habit. But godmother said she'd teach me how to play blackjack next week. Kushina sent Tsunade a smoldering glare. What? Tsunade said defensively. Everyone gathered in the living room for the family meeting. Kushina stood there in front of all of them and spoke. The past 5 years here have been good ones and I've enjoyed them. But Naruto is getting to that age when I am going to have to start increasing his training and really begin showing him what it is to be ninja. Part of that includes explaining to him why we do what we do. I want him to understand what it means to be part of a clan and to be committed to protecting something greater than yourself. And I don't think I can do that here. Oh, Shinzo said. I want Naruto to grow up in a ninja village. Kushina said. Everyone began looking a little nervous. Which village? Tsunade asked. Suna. For foreign ninja, entering a ninja village was anything but routine. In theory, the mere act of having one village's ninja enter another without permission could constitute an act of war. For the individual ninja it was a crime punishable by death. As a rule, a foreign ninja could only safely enter another village with a document signed and sealed by that village's leader. This was not always easy to acquire. So following Kushina's bold declaration, they did not simply pack up and leave. Formal requests for visas were sent out. In turn, they received official documents asking them to explain the reason and nature of the proposed visit. For Kushina, Saishu, and Shinzo, they could simply request permission to take residence and re-establish their clan. Being from a village that no longer existed, they were considered non-aligned. Meaning they held no allegiance to any other village and no village had declared them to be missing nin. They would request resident status. Tsunade and Shizune were both active leaf nin, though they had special permission from the Hokage to travel as they pleased. They could only request guest status. They would ask to be allowed to enter and stay in the village while remaining foreign ninja. Kakashi was in an unusual position. He had declared he would no longer serve his original village. But rather than brand him a missing nin, the Hokage had granted him permission to go. Despite the declaration and the Hokage's acquiescence, he was still viewed by other villages as having ties to Konoha. Kakashi decided it would be best if he too requested guest status. Kushina's group had a couple advantages. First off, Tsunade was not only famous as a Sannin, but as the acknowledged leader in the field of medical jutsu. Meanwhile, Kakashi not only possessed the legendary Sharingan but had garnered a reputation as an elite assassin. In the shinobi world, that was something to take real pride in. As a result, they received temporary visas and permission to visit Suna after only 6 weeks. Kushina had grown up by the sea in a place where it rained almost every day. Later she had lived in Konoha and in river country, places filled with trees and a wide mixture of plant life. Suna was located in the heart of a vast desert. Traveling there, they literally crossed hundreds of miles without spotting a single living thing. Seeing this barren wasteland with her own eyes made her question her decision. "Why are we doing this again?" Shinzo asked during one of their regular water breaks. They were traveling light so that everyone could get there in one quick 2-day trip. Most of their possessions were coming by wagon and would be a couple weeks behind. Shinzo was carrying his wife. Saishu had Michio on his back and Kakashi was carrying Minori. Kushina of course had Naruto. Kushina looked over to her brother as she and her son had some salt tablets to go with their water. "Like I said, I want Naruto and the boys to grow up in a ninja village, not in a mercenary band. But of all the ninja villages, why'd you pick the only one in the middle of a desert?" "I decided it had to be one of the 5 great villages. Otherwise there would always be the danger of Konoha intimidating our new village if they ever decide they want to force us, or Naruto, to return. Leaf and Iwa are out for obvious reasons. Kiri is in the middle of a civil war right now. And I'm not sure I'd want to permanently settle in a place nicknamed Bloody Mist, anyway. I would have considered Kumo, except they had that little border war with Leaf a couple years ago. I still remember because there was some sort of incident during the peace negotiations. A former friend of mine, Hyuga Hazashi, was sacrificed to appease them. Feelings between Kumo and Konoha are still hard. You, me, and Uncle might get permission to go there, but I doubt they would let Tsunade, Shizune, or Kakashi in. So that left Suna." Shinzo made a face and swallowed a salt tablet. "Kuki, we're water types. What good are we going to be in the middle of this?" He waved about at the arid terrain. She shrugged. "I'm sure not every mission we go on will be in the desert. Besides, a sword works just as well in any climate." About 40 miles from the village they were met by a patrol. They presented their papers and were then escorted the rest of the way to Suna. At the village entrance they were again required to present their documents. The guards there made a show of checking them and confirming they really were valid before finally allowing them entrance. The journey had been a bit rough on Aoi and the kids. She asked if there was anywhere they could go to relax while the others went to the Tower of Wind to await an audience with the case cage. The 4-man squad that was acting as escorts, guides, put their heads together. They finally decided that Aoi and the children could wait in a nearby park where one of the Suna nin would keep an eye on them. Everyone else continued onto the tower. When they arrived at the park, they saw a large number of children playing a game that involved kicking a ball around. Michio and Minori wanted to see if they could join in. Naruto spotted some swings and headed in that direction. There was only one other child on the swings. A little red-haired kid with a teddy bear clutched in one arm. Too late, the Suna nin realized who that boy was. He wanted to shout a warning to the little foreigner. But he didn't dare draw that sort of attention to himself. As Naruto approached the swings, the other boy looked up at him. "Hi there," Naruto called out. "Mind if I join you?" The boy blinked a couple of times and just stared at him. Finally he gave a mute nod. That was enough for Naruto. He sat down on the swing next to the quiet boy and began to swing himself back and forth, trying to get higher and higher. The other boy wasn't swinging. He was just sitting there watching silently. After a few minutes the boy suddenly spoke up. "Aren't you scared of me?" "Huh?" Naruto stuck out his feet and skidded to a halt. "What did you say? Aren't you scared of me?" The boy repeated morosely. "Everyone else is, even my family, everyone but Uncle Yashimaru. Why would I be scared of you?" All at once the sand in front of them began to fountain and dance about. "That's why," the boy said. "I can do that, so I'm a monster." The boy watched as the other child stared at the dancing sand. He knew what was coming next. The other boy would start screaming and run away as fast as he could. Naruto suddenly looked away from the sand and gave the red-haired boy an excited grin. "That's so cool." The red-haired boy blinked. He wasn't sure how to respond. He'd never gotten that reaction from anyone. "You're so lucky," Naruto continued, totally oblivious to the other boy's surprise. "I can't do any jutsus yet." My mom says I have to let my chakra coils develop some more first. But she's already promised to teach me lots and lots of jutsus. Not just my mom either. My uncle, my grand-uncle, and Kakashi Nissan all say they're going to teach me jutsus and all sorts for weapons and fighting styles. I can't wait." He abruptly made an unhappy face. "My godmother keeps saying she's going to teach me medical jutsus, but that sounds boring. It's okay. Though, she taught me lots of other cool stuff like how to shoot craps and play blackjack." He suddenly leaned in close and gave the other boy a look of keen interest. "Hey, do you think you can teach me this jutsu?" The red-haired boy blinked again. He couldn't remember anyone ever talking to him this much. "It's not really a jutsu," he explained quietly. "It's just something I can do naturally. I'm the only one who can do it." "Ah, that's too bad." Naruto sounded disappointed but continued to smile. "But it's still really cool though." The other boy just continued to sit there looking at him. "So you want to be friends?" Naruto asked. "Friends?" The red-haired boy sounded uncertain. "You want to be friends with me?" "Sure," Naruto replied easily. "So do you?" "Yes," the boy shouted, showing real emotion for the very first time. "I don't want to be alone anymore." Okay," Naruto said, caught a bit off guard by such a big reaction to such a small thing. He stuck out his hand. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto." Tentatively the other boy reached out and gingerly took the hand and gave it a weak shake. "I am Sabaku no Gaara." "Well, it's nice to meet you, Gaara. I hope we can be good friends." "I hope so too." The two of them played at the swings for a while until Michio and Minori came over with their mom. Apparently the teams playing ball were set and they had gotten bored with just watching. Naruto introduced his cousins and aunt to his new friend and told them about the neat things he could do with sand. Though a bit hesitant, Gaara finally agreed to put on another demonstration. The two younger boys as well as their mother were suitably impressed. For the first time that he could remember, Gaara was using his power without feeling like some sort of freak. Soon all four boys were running around playing together under always watchful eye. When the local kids noticed that Gaara was playing with other children, their own game came to an immediate halt. They all kept watching, expecting Gaara to suddenly attack his playmates at any moment. That evening when Gaara went home, Uncle Yashimaru was there to greet him like usual. Also like usual, his father, sister, and brother were all avoiding him. But for once he didn't really care. Yashimaru noticed the difference in his nephew immediately. "Gaara, you're smiling, did something good happen today?" "Yes, Uncle Yashimaru," Gaara answered with a rare excitement in his voice. "I made some friends." 3 days, Kushina growled. "It's been 3 days and we still haven't been given an audience with the case cage." "I know," Shinzo said patiently. "I was there too." She gave her brother an exasperated look. "You're not helping, you know." He shrugged. "It's not like anything I say would really help." When they had arrived, they had been brought to the Tower of Wind and told the case cage would meet with them. They'd spent the entire afternoon sitting in the lobby waiting as others arrived and were shuttled in and out of the case cage's presence. While they waited, finally a secretary had informed them the case cage was done for the day. She told them they would have to return early the next morning to again await an audience. Kushina had asked about setting up an appointment, only to be politely told there were none available. They would simply need to come back and wait for some opportune moment when the case cage might find time for them. Kushina and all the ninja did as they were instructed. They had spent all day yesterday and all day today sitting there, forced to watch as others were permitted to meet the case cage as they cooled their heels. And at the end of each business day a secretary would come over to inform them they would need to return again tomorrow morning. "He's doing this on purpose," she growled. "Obviously," Shinzo said. "If you don't have anything useful to say, then don't say anything." Kushina snapped. She had decided on this course. She was the one who had uprooted them from a pleasant routine in river country and brought them to the middle of the desert. Now not only were her efforts running into a stone wall, she was being made a fool of. "If he doesn't want to meet with us, why the hell did he approve our visas and give us permission to come here in the first place?" Shinzo grinned at her. "You're not looking underneath Kuki. Don't call me that. You know I hate being called that." "Fine then, you stop calling me Urusai, shut up. Like that'll ever happen." She stuck her tongue out at him. Saishu let out a groan. "I swear you two are behaving like children." Annoyed, she looked at her big brother. Growing up he had always been more logical than she had. He's had a real gift for strategic thinking and solving mysteries with the clues given. She on the other hand had been blessed with a devious mind and the ability to think on her feet and think outside the box. As a child it had helped her invent some interesting pranks and later on helped her set up ambushes and other surprising ploys. Her brother however had always been better at spotting patterns and figuring out what the enemy was up to. "Alright, Shinzo, what do you think is going on? The case cage is just putting us in our place is all," he told her. He wants to make it clear that even though we have a Sannin with us and the copy ninja that we need his help more than he needs us. This is just his way of letting us know we're not really that important. Humph. Well, if we're not that important maybe we should stop going to the tower and just wait for him to contact us. That would be a mistake, her uncle jumped in. It's no accident that a secretary keeps coming up to us to tell us to come back the next morning. Shinzo nodded. She's certainly acting on instructions. The case cage wants us to be inconvenienced and unhappy. He wants to make sure we're at least committed enough to put up with a little bother in order to meet with him. Kushina didn't look happy. As usual her brother was making some good sense. So what are we supposed to do? What else can we do? We keep going there every day, all day, until he finally decided to meet with us. What if this is all just some sort of joke to him and he never meets us? You don't invite a whole group of powerful independent-minded ninja into your village just for a joke. He is definitely interested in us, don't doubt it for a second. So what do we do? What can we do? We keep going there every day, all day, until the case cage sees fit to actually meet with us. And how long will that be? Shinzo shrugged his shoulders. Who knows? Days, weeks, maybe even months, I'm not the one to ask. The only one who knows for sure is the case cage. Wonderful, she muttered. The door to their hotel suite opened and Aoi came in followed by the children. When Kushina and the others had arrived she'd hoped to be given a residence that could become the new Uzumaki compound. But so far she'd heard nothing on that front. So for the time being they were renting suites in the most expensive hotel in Suna. Shinzo greeted his wife with a kiss and then gave each of his boys a hug. Kushina picked her son up and planted a whole bunch of kisses all over his face. Did you have fun in the park today, Naru-kun? Yeah mama, he said excitedly. We got to play all day, it was great. A small shadow of sadness crossed his features. But most of the other kids wouldn't come play with us though, they stayed away. Looks like they don't like foreigners here and more than they do in Konoha. Don't worry about it honey, she said lightly. I'm sure they'll play with you once they get more used to you and your cousins. At least here they don't call you demon or monster. They stayed away because of me. A quiet voice called from the hallway. Kushina glanced over to see a very nervous little boy standing there clutching a teddy bear in his arms. She noticed there was a pile of sand at his feet. Hello, and who are you? She asked in a friendly tone. This is Gaara, Aoi answered. He's the boy's new friend. I invited him to come and have dinner with us. I hope that's all right. Well of course it is, Kushina said happily. She was glad that Naruto and her nephews had started to make friends. Any friend of my Naru-kun is always welcome. I'm Kushina, Naruto's mother. That is Shinzo, Michio and Minori's father and that is Saishu my uncle. Won't you please come in? The boy looked at her with a mix of fear and hope. Thank you very much for inviting me, he said softly. As he entered the suite she noted that the sand followed him in moving just like a living thing. He saw the way Kushina was watching the sand at his feet. It's all right, he said nervously. I promise I won't cause any trouble and the sand stays with me so it won't make a mess. Isn't it cool mama? Naruto said. He can make sand do anything he wants. That's a very interesting kekkei genkei you have, Saishu said. I've never seen anything quite like it. Gaara looked at the man confused. What's that? It's what's known as a bloodline limit, Kushina said. An ability that is inherent to certain people with certain DNA. You're able to use sand like that because of what's in your blood. Hasn't your family ever explained to you where your powers come from? Gaara cast his eyes down. I get my powers because I'm a monster. Kushina and every adult in the room stiffened. Who told you that? Kushina demanded. Everyone, the boy said sadly. Everyone calls me a monster. Even my family, everyone but my uncle Yashimaru. He's the only one who has never called me that. Kushina set Naruto down and then knelt in front of Gaara. Come here. She reached out and brought the boy into her arms and embraced him. It was the first time anyone had ever hugged him. When she touched him Gaara stiffened with fear, afraid she was going to try and hurt him. The sand reacted to his emotions and began jumping about wildly. But he didn't will it to attack her, and it didn't automatically rise to prevent her contact. When he realized that Gaara understood she wasn't trying to hurt him. Whenever he was in danger or whenever there was intent to harm, the sand would react on its own. As his fear passed, the sand at his feet settled back down. He abruptly realized that this felt good. This embrace felt warm and comforting. It felt good to be held. "You poor child," she said to him tenderly. "You're no monster, you're just a little boy. And whatever is in your blood doesn't change that. The people who say that to you, they're the monsters. Never ever call yourself that again. You're a human being and no one should ever see you as anything else." He didn't understand why, but hearing her soft words and feeling the warmth of her arms and body, he suddenly began to cry. "Shish, there, she whispered to him and stroked the back of his neck. It broke her heart to see how deeply he was affected by just this tiny bit of comfort. Hadn't this poor boy ever been shown any kindness at all? Just what sort of family did he have? Is this what would have happened to Naruto if I had dies and he'd been left all alone? It was a horrible thought and made her wonder if this place was really any better than Konoha after all. She held and soothed him until his tears finally passed. Then she gave him a happy smile. "All right, no more sad feelings, okay." The boy nodded and wiped his eyes. "Okay, now let's order room service and have a nice dinner." A couple hours later, the adults were sitting watching as the children played together. Looking at him, Gaara seemed no different than any of the other children. Aside from the sand that followed him about, there was a knock on the door. Kushina got up to answer it. Standing there was a slightly effeminate-looking fellow with long blonde hair. She also noted he wore a Suna Hite Ite, marking him as a ninja. "Pardon me," he said in a courteous voice. "But is Gaara here? I have come to take him home." "Uncle Yashimaru," Gaara called out happily. He got up and ran over to the other man's side. The man smiled down at the little boy. "You seem very happy, Gaara. Did you enjoy visiting?" "Yes, uncle, they were all very nice to me." He looked up at Kushina. "Thank you for being so nice to me, no one else ever has been." He glanced back at the man. "Except for Uncle Yashimaru." "It was our pleasure, Gaara," she informed him. "You are welcome to come and visit us any time that you like." "Really?" Gaara said excitedly. Of course, she reached down and patted the top of his head. "You are a good boy, Gaara. I can't imagine how anyone could ever see you as anything else. Only a fool would blame a child for something that was inside of him. You can only choose what you do, not who you are." Yashimaru heard her words and stood there silently. "Thank you for being so generous to Gaara," he finally said. Kushina smiled at the man. "Well, of course, he's just a child after all." "Yes," Yashimaru said, "of course he is." They were walking through the darkened streets of Suna hand in hand. Yashimaru could not remember ever seeing the little boy so happy. For his part, he tried to hide the feeling and thoughts that were swirling about inside of him. His exterior he managed to keep calm. No one looking at him would ever guess he had strapped 50 explosive notes to his chest and was planning to kill himself and his nephew. When he had set out to transport Gaara home, he had determined that it would be tonight. He had tried to love Gaara, tried to see him as the last remaining link to his beloved Oni-sama. But no matter how he tried, he couldn't bring himself to love the boy. It had been his fault his precious sister had died. She'd been sacrificed to make him a living weapon. She had named him Gaara, meaning it to be a curse, the demon that loves only himself. She had died cursing him and the village. He resented Gaara, hated him for stealing her away. And yet, only a fool would blame a child for something that was inside of him. You can only choose what you do, not who you are. He's just a child after all. Those words from that woman. Why did they bother him so? Gaara wasn't just a boy. He was a monster. He was the reason his sister had died. Ending his existence was the right thing to do. "Yashimaru?" the boy called uncertainly. "Yes, Gaara? What is it?" He spoke in the same gentle tone he had always used around him. The boy looked fearful. "Uncle, would you hug me?" Yashimaru blinked, caught totally off guard by the request. "Yes, if you like. We are family after all." The boy held out his arms to him eagerly. Yashimaru bent down and took him into his arms. Now is the time, he thought. I should do it now while I am holding him. "Warm," the boy murmured. "It feels so warm." "Yes," Yashimaru said quietly. "It is warm. When I was a little boy, your mother would hug me like this. It always made me feel happy to have Oni-sama hug me." I wish I still had my mommy. Gaara said. Yes, so do I. Gaara looked up at him. Yashimaru, if my mother were alive would she hug me? Of course, if she had lived she would have treasured you and always wanted to hold you. I miss her, he said. But I'm glad I at least have you, uncle. He hesitated. He doesn't seem like a monster right now. He picked Gaara up and began to carry him in his arms. Let's go home, Lord Gaara. As they approached the Sabaku mansion, a lone figure waited for them by the gate. Father, Gaara said nervously. Gaara, he spoke coolly. He had never once referred to him as son and didn't ever plan to. You seem unusually happy. I got to visit with my friends and their family. I see. They say I can visit them whenever I want. Is it all right if I go see them again tomorrow? The case cage gave a curt nod. Certainly, spend as much time with them as you like. The man then shifted his focus to Yashimaru. I am a little surprised to see you here. I had thought you were going to handle that mission I'd assigned you tonight. Yashimaru bowed his head. I apologize, Case Cage-sama, but I have had a change of heart. With your permission I would like to decline the assignment. I see, the man said neutrally. That's fine. I won't force you into it. Thank you, Case Cage-sama. As the case cage watched Yashimaru bring Gaara inside, an interesting idea was forming. Perhaps there's a way to solve my problem and still keep him for the future. The following morning, Kushina and all the ninja of her party were once again in the tower lobby. Here we go again, she muttered quietly. Excuse me, the secretary that dismissed them at the end of each business day approached them. Now what? Kushina wondered. Yes? The secretary bowed and motioned for them to follow her. The case cage will see you now. Every ninja village had its own traditions and own way of doing things. The long-delayed audience with the case cage only served to remind her of that. It wasn't the fact that she and the others were required to submit to a search and had to hand over all their weapons. Though letting a stranger take her katana almost felt like letting someone take Naruto from her. Every village required foreign ninja be disarmed prior to meeting the village leader. Only ninja of the same village were permitted into a leader's presence armed. It had been the same way in Whirlpool and Konoha. So while she didn't like it, she accepted it. No, what she really objected to was being required to kneel. Her father had served as the leader of Whirlpool for most of his life. His title was not Cage but Headsman. Visitors would offer him a bow or nod of the head as a polite greeting and he would always return the courtesy. Though he took great pride in being the leader of the Uzumaki clan and Whirlpool village, he never behaved as though he walked above the earth. Sarutobi too, despite his other faults, was always courteous and respectful to his guests whatever their status. He was the undisputed leader of one of the 5 great ninja villages, but had a manner of a kindly grandfather rather than a powerful ruler. But apparently the case cage preferred a different image. After being searched and disarmed, they were ushered into his office and informed they were required to kneel and not speak until the case cage gave them leave. As though that were not enough, he was sitting on a small raised dais behind a cloth screen. With an open window behind him they could see his silhouette, but were not permitted to look at him directly. It reminded Kushina of stories about speaking with demigods who had come to Earth. In those tales, even glimpsing the true form of the divine was enough to cause instant death. Perhaps he is made of a different flesh, she thought unhappily. Maybe if he is cut, water or wine flows out instead of blood. But somehow I doubt it. The reverence the Suna Anbu and servants showed also bothered her. They really did seem to act as though he were a kami made flesh rather than simply the strongest ninja of the village. But having come this far and at last having been permitted an audience, she knew better than to share her thoughts. We have to be the ones to adapt if we're going to live here. I can't expect everyone to have the same traditions of home. So she went in and knelt and lowered her face as she'd been instructed. We welcome you, a voice spoke smoothly from behind the screen. Please do forgive the delay in meeting, we fear it was unavoidable. Kushina lifted her eyes, though she remained kneeling. We are simply grateful to be allowed into your presence and to be given this opportunity to speak with you. Yes, the voice replied as though expecting that very answer. And what business have you brought before us? Case Cage-sama, we have come before you today to ask your leave in re-establishing our clan here in the village of Suna. If you will grant us a home here and recognize us as a clan, then we will pledge to you the same devotion and loyalty we gave to our original village. A whirlpool in the desert, the case cage said with a faint trace of amusement. Are all present included in this request? No, and you damn well know it. No, Case Cage-sama, Kushina answered politely. The request is only for the members of my clan, myself, my brother, and my uncle, and will of course also include our children and descendants. And what would the others ask of me? The case-cage inquired. Is it your intention to remain here or return to your own villages? With respect, Kakashi spoke. Though I left my ancestral village, I have no desire to join another. I would however be willing to work on behalf of this village on selected missions that did not take place in Fire Country or oppose the forces of Leaf. They could see the shadow of the case-cage's head turned towards Kakashi. We were under the impression you had abandoned the Leaf village, yet you object to opposing them in the field? I did leave the village, Kakashi replied. For my own reasons. However, I still have many comrades and friends among the Leaf Nin and I would not want to draw their blood. As he said that, a picture of Rin's sad face came into his mind. For the famed copy ninja, we are certain that some accommodation could be reached. As for myself, Tsunade spoke up. I have seen too much killing already. In any case, despite everything I've gone through, I'm not ready to sever my ties with my grandfather's village. What I will do is work in the local hospital and teach others medical jutsu. That's if Kushina and the others end up staying, of course. We would be greatly honored to have the services of the legendary Sannin Tsunade, even if it is limited. Shizune hesitated and had to gather herself. I would like to stay a while and help the Lady Tsunade and the others. But at some point I would want to return home to Konoha. Tsunade looked at her apprentice slightly disappointed, but said nothing. We understand, you will of course be free to leave whenever you choose. The silhouette seemed to focus back on Kushina. This village suffered terrible losses in the previous war, losses that have left Suna short-handed. We would be pleased to welcome 3 Jonin into our service. We offer each of you the honored title of Suna Ninja and the rank of Jonin. What about a residence and recognition of our rights as a clan? Kushina asked warily. We fear we cannot grant you such. You will be welcomed into the village and permitted to serve as regular ninja. Kushina's mouth set in a hard line. I am very sorry, Case-Cage-sama, but I am afraid that is not good enough. If we are to come here and serve you in this village, then we must be granted the rights and privileges of a clan. Must you? The voice said much too gently. In Suna there are only 8 clans. They are referred to as the 8 Great Houses. They are each guaranteed a place on the Council of Wind and granted all sorts of special privileges and rights. Were we to recognize you as a clan, Suna would have a 9th Great House. Why should we allow you such an honor when all you bring with you are 3 ordinary ninja? Kushina clenched her hands and tried to keep the fury from her voice. With all due respect, Case-Cage-sama, the Uzumaki have never been ordinary ninja. If you doubt me, you have only to speak to the Tsuchikage or any other ninja from Iwa. Actually, we spoke with the Tsuchikage some years ago prior to the war. Back when we were negotiating, before we became Case-Cage. You would be interested to know that the Tsuchikage did mention your clan. He also praised of it. Not only Kushina but Saishu and Shinzo all wore matching expressions of total disbelief. Forgive me, Case-Cage-sama, but I find it hard to believe that the Tsuchikage would ever praise us. We were the most bitter of enemies. Well, it was praise of a sort. He was speaking of his intentions in the coming war and mentioned he planned to conquer Whirlpool before moving on to Waterfall. I believe his exact words were, the land there isn't really worth having. But it's worth destroying just to get rid of the damn Uzumaki. Kushina heard her brother chuckle. Dad would have liked that. Kushina smiled fondly. Yeah, I think he really would have. Still, the Case-Cage continued. Even if you were fierce opponents of the Rock Ninja, that alone is insufficient reason to grant you the title of clan. Clans are normally created because they have some unique ability. Tell us, does your clan possess a Kekkei Genkei? We do not, Kushina admitted. But clans are formed because they possess either a unique ability or skill. We Uzumaki have always been recognized as the most skilled of swordsmen. All 3 of us who kneel before you are 5th level blade masters, the highest rank. We are the deadliest users of the katana in all the elemental lands. The head behind the screen bobbed up and down. A most useful skill we grant, but still insufficient for establishing a great house. With all due respect, Case-Cage-sama, our skills and training techniques are worthy of recognition. I am certain other villages would agree. We are ready to be your most faithful and devoted guardians, to fight for you and lay down our lives for you, as my clan did for 300 years in Out Village by the sea. But only if you permit us to be a clan. We will not remain here if we are to be treated as ordinary ninja. And as our friends have stated, they will not remain either. Surely the services of 3 expert swordsmen, the world's top medic nin, and the famous copy ninja warrant the establishing of a new clan? She saw his arms come together front of her chest. In her mind's eye she pictured a man in cage robes steepling his fingers. We fear it is not enough. Damn it, damn it, damn it, I brought everyone here for nothing. There was no point in joining a ninja village if they were not going to be allowed to stay together as a clan. A clan meant your fighting style and your traditions were always respected. It meant that each generation would grow up together strong and united, bound together not just by blood and by name but by custom and common practice. The Uzumaki had been a clan for 300 years and had been among the founders of Whirlpool. She would not be the one to let her beloved clan begin to wither and fragment. In that case, Cage-sama, I fear I have wasted your time. Without asking permission she rose to her feet. Seeing this the others got up as well. I sincerely thank you for granting us this audience, but if you will not grant us clan status then I think it best that we leave. Is clan status really so important to you? The Cage's voice seemed to almost purr. Kushina narrowed her eyes. He wants something. It is absolutely vital. We will not remain here without it. We could grant you what you seek. But there has been no new house in Suna in over 50 years. Were we to grant you such an extraordinary privilege it would require some equally extraordinary service in return. I see, she replied carefully. Does the Cage have a particular service in mind? There is a child, our male offspring, who possesses the potential for great power but who we fear may be dangerously unstable and therefore a threat to all those around him. Your male offspring? You mean your son? No, there was iron in his voice. That child is not our son even if he does hold our blood. It is our wish that you adopt this child into your clan and take responsibility for him. If you will agree to this then we will grant you a residence and name Uzumaki the 9th great house of Suna. You want me to adopt your offspring and raise him? She was shocked. Her son was the most precious thing in the world to her. For that matter all the members of her family were more precious to her than gold. Even her annoying brother. How could a man be so heartless as to get rid of his own son? I would have to at least meet the boy first before I could give you my answer. The Cage chuckled. You really don't know, do you? He sounded very amused. You have already met him. In fact we believe you had dinner together just last night. Gaara? She gasped. Gaara is your son? He is my offspring, the Cage said coldly. She remembered what the little boy had told her. Everyone calls me a monster, even my family. She hadn't wanted to believe that. How could family members be that cruel to their own flesh and blood? Now, shockingly, it turned out that Gaara was part of the ruling clan. She'd assumed he was just part of a regular ninja family. And the Cage, his father, refused to refer to him as son. What sort of cruel heart does he have? Will you accept our terms? We must tell you that once Gaara is adopted he will be expected to obey the laws and customs that other ninja follow. No exceptions will be made for him. The Cage sounded almost savage. Should he kill or otherwise break the laws of this village both he and you will be made to suffer for it. He will be completely your responsibility. In every village I have ever heard of a ninja is free to defend himself if attacked and his fellow ninja would be free to help him, Kushina said coolly. Is that also the case here? It is, the Cage replied. In Konoha the clans were given the right to deal with trespassers in any way they chose including killing them on sight. The shadowed head bobbed up and down. We have a similar law. The clans are considered to be sovereign within their estates. Kushina took a deep breath. In that case, Cage-sama, I will adopt Gaara myself. He'll be my second son. I will raise him to be a fine Uzumaki and I promise I will keep him safe. Be certain to keep the village safe from him as well. Just so long as the villagers don't try and attack him, she said happily. She again saw the Cage nod again behind his screen. Very well then, we will grant you the rights and privileges of a clan and great house. Kushina nodded and allowed herself a tiny smile. The Uzumaki of Suna, the whirlpool of the desert. She liked the sound of that. Following the most eventful meeting with the Cage the Uzumakis and the others returned to their hotel suites. There was a lot to plan. Once they were given their new residence they would move into it and start preparing it. Their furniture wouldn't arrive for about 2 weeks but Kushina wanted them all to move into it as soon as possible. Kushina would also need to welcome Gaara into the clan and family. Since he was already friend to her son and nephews, she hoped it wouldn't be too difficult. They would also need to learn about their new home, the laws, local customs, and power structure. Kushina had a depressing certainty that a lot of people were going to resent her and her clan. As in Konoha, she and the others were likely to be viewed as outsiders who had just shown up and stolen something they had no right to. Great house status. Kushina was determined to do everything she could to fit in, while holding firm to her clan's traditions, of course. While the Uzumaki, Tsunade, Kakashi, and Shizune were discussing these plans, they had an unexpected visitor. "Yashimaru, please do come in." Kushina opened wide the door and let the man inside. "If you're looking for Gaara, he is at the park with Aoi and the children." "No," he told her. "I was actually hoping to talk to you and your kinsman. Is it true that the case cage has asked you to adopt Gaara? And that you have accepted?" "It is," Kushina confirmed with a grimace. "And to be honest, I think it will be best for everyone involved, especially Gaara. If his own family really calls him a monster and his father refuses to even acknowledge him as son, then I am sure he will be much happier living as part of my clan." Looking at him, she offered a reassuring smile. "Don't think I include you in that though. It's obvious Gaara loves you and that you are kind to him. You'll be more than welcome to see him whenever you like, and of course you will remain his uncle regardless." Kushina was surprised to see that the result of her words was an expression of deep melancholy. "How is it," he asked softly, "that a group of strangers who know nothing of him have shown Gaara more compassion than his own family or village?" Kushina blinked. "Well, I have no idea why he is treated so badly. I am just treating him as a little boy. How else would I treat him?" "Tell me," Yashimaru asked. "Did the case cage inform you the reason he is treated as he is, or the source of his power over sand?" "No," Kushina answered. "Why am I getting a bad feeling about this? For your sake as well as for Gaara's, I feel that you need to know the full truth." He glanced at the others in the room. "May I speak to you in private?" Kushina looked at all of them. "Would you mind?" One by one everyone else filed out, leaving just the two of them. "All right," Kushina said. "Now what is it you want to tell me? To begin with, what I am revealing to you is an S-rank secret. By giving you this information I am committing a capital offense and placing my life in grave danger." "Then don't tell me." "Yashimaru, whatever it is, if it's S-rank you must not speak of it." "I have to," Yashimaru said, determined. "No matter the consequences, I owe it to Gaara and to you who have shown him such compassion. You deserve to know the truth about him before you adopt him. Now tell me, have you heard of the Biju?" She felt ice in the pit of her stomach. "Does he know about Naruto and the Kyuubi? The Biju are great demons who walk the earth. Tailed beasts of immense power. The Kyuubi who attacked Konoha was one such." She had mentioned the Kyuubi deliberately and waited to see if he would expand on that subject. Instead he merely nodded. "Yes, the Kyuubi was the 9-tailed Biju. There are 8 others, including the 1-tailed Shukaku." "Have you ever heard of him?" "Can't say that I have," Kushina admitted. "Before the Kyuubi's attack I had never even heard of Biju. Well, the important thing to know is that they are indeed creatures of immense chakra and destructive force. And it is possible to control this vast power by placing the demon's spirit into a newborn using a special seal and a human sacrifice." "Is that so?" she asked nervously. "Does he know? Does the case cage know?" Yashimaru nodded sadly. "Such a person is referred to as a Jinchuriki. Gaara is such a person. He had the Shukaku placed within him at the moment of his birth. While his mother, my beloved sister, was made the human sacrifice against her will." "What?" she gasped. Her thoughts had been focused on Naruto and his demon. "Are you saying Gaara has a demon inside of him?" "Yes, the 1-tailed Shukaku. Following the end of the war, when the case cage was elevated to his position, he began to fear that Suna would be overwhelmed by other more powerful and numerous villages. He felt there was no choice but to rely on the overwhelming power of special weapons. And so he chose to sacrifice both his wife and his son for the sake of creating such a weapon." "Wait a minute, are you saying this was done deliberately? Suna wasn't being attacked and the case cage forced to act to save his village?" Yashimaru looked at her in a bit dazed. "Attacked? No, the Shukaku did attack the village many years before, but was captured by the first case cage and imprisoned within a metal container. The Shukaku had been contained and rendered harmless. The case cage made a deliberate choice to remove him from his prison and place him within Gaara so that the Biju's power could be harnessed." She thought she was going to throw up. When Minato had suggested using their unborn son as the Kyuubi's container, it had been an act of desperation and heroic sacrifice. Minato did not ask someone to sacrifice themselves, though if he had, she was sure there would have been countless volunteers. He felt that as Hokage the responsibility was his, and his alone. And just as he felt that sacrifice fell upon him, he felt that Naruto, as his son and heir, had the duty to act as the Kyuubi's container. It had nothing to do with gaining power. To think a man would deliberately do that not only to his son but to his wife as well. What sort of cowardly monster could be that unfeeling? And all just to make his child a weapon. I think I see why people call him a monster, she said coldly. Though so far as I can see, it's this cage that is the real monster. He was the one who made the choice. What choice did Gaara have in all this? The man slowly nodded. That is true, but I am afraid that is not how most people see it. Not even me, until just recently. The people see Gaara as the Shukaku incarnate and are terrified of him. What's more, the sealing was not properly performed. He is unable to sleep. If he ever falls asleep, the demon would gain control of his body. This forced insomnia has left Gaara a little mentally unstable. It also caused the cage to fear he might not be able to control Gaara. So he decided to cancel the experiment. Just what the hell does that mean? Cancel the experiment? He ordered that Gaara be killed. There was a long painful silence and Kushina took that in. So he murdered his wife, implanted a demon into his own son, and then when he was scared of the very situation he created, he tried to murder his son. The more I learn about him, the more and more I wonder if I shouldn't have brought my clan somewhere else. Maybe lightning wouldn't have been too bad after all. Well, Gaara is still alive. Does that mean the cage had a change of heart? No, Yoshimaru said solemnly. He sent one of his top Anbu assassins to kill him. But Gaara's sand automatically protects him from all harm. Not only did Gaara survive the assassination attempt, but he killed the man. He killed him? That little boy killed an Anbu? Yes, and that was not the only time. There have been several assassination attempts, all have ended with the assailant's death. The sand provides Gaara with an absolute defense that no enemy seems able to defeat. It also gives him lethal striking power. He may only be a child, but do not doubt that he is a living weapon of great power. Kushina shook her head. The boy was only 6. Just a year older than her Naru-kun. All ninja had to learn to deal with killing sooner or later, but to have already killed so many at such a tender age. It was horrible. She could understand why he had seemed so fearful and why he had reacted so strongly to a simple act of compassion. Just what sort of life had he had up until now? Now you know the truth of his situation. If you take Gaara into your home, you will be living with someone who will always be a bit unstable and who will have the power to kill any of you with ease. He paused. Do you still intend to adopt him? Of course, she snapped. Do you think I'd let that poor child endure that sort of abuse a minute longer? For Gaara's sake, I am very glad to hear that. He bowed low. Thank you for the great kindness you have shown him. Please take good care of Gaara. He turned to go. Yoshimaru, I thank you for telling me all this. You are a good man. I can see why Gaara cares for you. No, I am not a good man at all. He left silently without looking back. When everyone else returned, they told them the news. Hearing it, Shinzo looked at his sister with wry amusement. You're going to be the mother of 2 Jinchuriki. That has got to be some kind of record. So are you still adopting him? Kakashi asked pleasantly. Of course. Aren't you just a little bit nervous about the whole mentally unstable weapon who can kill Anbu with ease? No, Kushina said flatly. That boy is no more a monster than Naruto is. He's just a scared little boy who has had nothing but hatred and abuse aimed at him. If my poor Naru-chan had stayed in Konoha alone, he would have suffered the same, I bet. I'm sure that as soon as he is brought into a loving environment, he will adapt and become much happier. And so when a little later Aoi returned from the park with all the children, everyone gathered to give Gaara the news. When Kushina informed Gaara that he would be adopted by, he stood there staring up at her. Naruto had a stronger response. Yahoo! This is so great. I get to have a real brother. He looked over to Kakashi. No offense, Kakashi-Nisan. Kakashi grinned beneath his mask. None taken. Kushina looked down at the little boy who was still just staring at her. She'd expected more of a reaction. Well, Gaara, what do you think? He answered shyly. Will you hug me and let me call you mother? Laughing at the solemn answer, she swept him up into an embrace and planted kisses all over his face. Of course my little Gara-kun. From now on I am your cousin, Naruto is your father, and we will all be family to you in one way or another. You are my son, Uzumaki Gara, and from now on you will never be unloved or alone again. He smiled and closed his eyes. He wondered if the strange feeling in heart was what they called happiness. What have you done? An outraged Cage yelled at him. He was not in his formal robes now. He was not on stage giving a performance. This was the real man in his home. A clever man with great intelligence and a shrewd politician and bargainer. A man who knew how to play the angles and make people see what he wanted them to see. But behind all that was someone who was always a little bit afraid. Someone who longed for greatness but did not really possess the necessary strength of will and character to achieve it. The man who had sacrificed his precious Oni-sama in order to make a weapon. And then had decided to render that sacrifice meaningless by destroying that very weapon. How could I have ever served him? I told our guests the truth about Gara, Yashimaru said patiently. They deserved at least that much before adopting him. And what if they refuse now that they know he is a monster? You needn't be concerned on that score, Cage-sama. Unlike you, Kushina views Gara as a boy rather than as a monster. She still intends to adopt him. The man stared at him with unbelieving eyes. Why did you come here to tell me this? He demanded. Had you kept silent I would not have known. But as it is I cannot allow this to pass. You revealed an S-rank secret. This cannot be forgiven or forgotten. I know. Then why? Is your life so unimportant to you? The reason is simple, Cage-sama. I can no longer bear the shame of serving the man who killed my Oni-sama, nor can I forgive myself for planning to kill my innocent nephew. Innocent? Gara is a monster. Perhaps, Yashimaru permitted, but even if he is, it was not his doing. That choice was yours alone. For that I should have killed you, but my duty as a Sunanin would not allow that. I can only hope that my death will redeem my failings in life. The Cage shook his head. Your death is pointless and meaningless, he signaled a pair of guards. It will change nothing. As the two guards took him out of the Sabaku mansion to the place of his execution, Yashimaru held his head up high. Live long and well, Gara. Oni-sama, I will be with you soon. Have a good day, dear. Aoi gave him a quick kiss, then hurried to see why little Miwa was crying. I'll see you later, Shinzo said and headed out the door. It was his day to take care of training. Even though it was still morning, it was already getting hot. He and the others had taken to wearing turbans like the locals did. Though unlike most of the locals who mostly wore shades of tan and gray, he and the rest of his clan wore the black and red of their traditional battle dress. That made them stand out, but it was part of their clan tradition and identity. There was never any thought of giving them up. Stepping out into the courtyard of the Uzumaki complex, he was still struck by how bland it looked. They had been given a large house with 8 bedrooms and a courtyard running out 100 yards in each direction. The entire compound was surrounded by an iron fence. By local standards it was a luxurious local, and he had to admit the house itself was very nice. But it was the courtyard that always bothered him. It was just empty ground. Nothing but sand and gravel. In Suna, water was considered more precious than gold, and the laws concerning how it could be used were absolute. Even the Cage could not violate them. Lawns were not permitted, and even gardens could only be grown to produce specific herbs and required a permit. The original Uzumaki compound had been filled with luscious grass, and in their home in river country they'd also kept a nice lawn. It still seemed odd to him to think that even though they were an official clan with a seat on the Council of Wind, they could not even have a lawn. It was just one of the many differences he'd had to get used to. Out in the courtyard the boys were already waiting for him. All of them were dressed in black and red body suits with swords on their backs and other equipment hanging on their belts. Walking up to them he gave them all a big smile. Has everyone got a full water canteen? Immediately both Michio and Minori groaned, while Gara simply nodded. Yeah, Naruto said energetically. Michio looked at his blonde cousin with an annoyed frown. Do you have to be happy about going out to the wastes? Naruto looked back at him with an unapologetic grin. You bet, since that means we'll do some jutsu training. Shinzo nodded his head in silent agreement. The courtyard was more than big enough for regular practice. But jutsus needed a lot more room to be used safely. Uncle Shinzo? Yes, Gara? He knew what the boy was going to ask. And sure enough, will we also be working with taijutsu and sword work? Don't we always? The boy looked at him questioningly. I still don't understand why I have to learn taijutsu or how to handle a sword. I won't ever need them, I'll always fight with my sand. To prove his point, the sand at his feet leapt into the air and danced around him violently. Unfazed Shinzo gave the same reply that he, his uncle, and his sister always gave to that question. You need to learn taijutsu because it's an absolute basic skill for any ninja. If your sand should ever fail you for any reason, you can still defend yourself with fists and feet. The same applies for your sword. Plus it's a clan tradition that all Uzumaki learn how to wield the blade. Gaara looked anything but convinced, but he still nodded and let the sand settle back down around his feet. Yes, uncle. Shinzo had no doubt that Gaara would bring up the same point again tomorrow and the next day and the day after. The boy was tireless if nothing else. Dad, Michio spoke up. Are we going to do circle drills? In reply, Shinzo leaned forward just a bit and grinned malevolently. What do you think? Now all the boys but Gaara let out a groan. You know that's child abuse. Michio said. Just try and think of it as a clan tradition, son. Your granddad did it to me and so now I must do it to you. Now let's get going. Without any real complaints, the four boys formed up and they went out the gate. As they left, Shinzo looked back at the clan symbol that was on the gate. The image of a swirling whirlpool, the symbol of Clan Uzumaki, 9th house of Suna. That at least had not changed. Suna, like Whirlpool Village but unlike Konoha, had no designated training grounds. Being surrounded by an endless tract of open flat ground, instructors were permitted to take students out of the village for training purposes. Once outside, they would simply pick out a spot and get to training. These training sessions would last all day, so it was important that they all had water. As they were walking through the village towards the gate, they drew plenty of hostile looks. No one said a word. No one made a gesture. All the people seemed to have the courage for was to look. They all knew the target for the hateful stares. Gaara had his mask on and he was looking right back at them as though they didn't exist. When Gaara was in the compound surrounded by family and friends, he would smile and laugh and seem like a normal, good-natured kid. Except for the pile of sand that followed him about like a puppy. Whenever he left the compound, the mask came firmly into place. He never reacted to anything and pretended to be totally apathetic. It was Naruto who reacted to all the glares and hard looks. He hated the way people treated his big brother, and just because he could do things with sand. To him, what Gaara could do was amazing and should have been respected, not hated. At this point in time, neither boy knew what a jinchuriki was or what the seals on their bodies were for. A tiny growl was coming from the back of his throat. Naruto, Shinzo said sharply. He could see his nephew was getting ready to let the people around him know what he thought of them. What have I told you about self-control? A ninja does not ever lose control of himself for any reason. Naruto looked at him, clearly upset. But shouldn't I defend Gaara when he's attacked? If he is attacked physically, then of course, we will all draw our swords and protect him. But to lose control of yourself and start shouting at people just for looking at him is not proper behavior. You don't need to protect me, Gaara said quietly. If anyone attacks me, I'll deal with it. You don't need to endanger yourselves for my sake. Shinzo looked at him and frowned. Anyone who attacks one Uzumaki attacks us all. Of course we would fight to protect you. Just as I am sure you would fight to protect Naruto or any of us if we were attacked. Besides, do you have any idea what your mother would do to me if I let anything happen to you? That almost got a smile out of Gaara. Come on. Let's not waste time worrying about what people think. We have training to do. They left the village and headed out into the wastes without incident. A very weary Sarutobi was trying to bring this meeting of the council to an end. Hyuga Hiyashi had not attended due to the sudden downturn in his wife's condition. Uchiha Fugaku had taken advantage of his main rival's absence to dominate the proceedings. Sarutobi kept a very wary eye on the Uchiha clan head. Rumors were floating about concerning attempts to make deals and draw closer to some of the other clans. He was trying to increase his power base. Given the vast wealth and influence he already enjoyed thanks to the Uchiha clan and the military police his clan dominated, the man might become a real threat. There were already whispers that he was aiming to become the 5th Hokage. Just how far are you willing to go, Fugaku? Sarutobi wondered. That the man was ambitious there was no doubt. So long as he acted within the law, Sarutobi had no real objection to his pursuing the position of Hokage. But he'd begun to receive disturbing reports from a special source that suggested the man had much more ruthless intentions. If there is nothing else, let us conclude this meeting of the council, Sarutobi said. Actually, Hokage-sama, there is one more piece of business I would like to bring up for debate. Fugaku spoke. Sarutobi nodded wearily. Very well, what is it you wish to discuss, Fugaku? I want to authorize a hand's mission to Suna to kidnap or kill Uzumaki Naruto. Hyuga Hana was lying in her bed with her daughter Hinata lying comfortably next to her. Hana was exhausted. She'd fought the sickness for more than a year. She'd wanted to go on living, not just for her own sake but for her darling husband and her precious daughters. She didn't want to leave them, but she knew she would have to leave them soon. Her vision was failing and just breathing was getting to be hard. The disease had sapped her of her strength bit by bit, until she did not have the strength to even go on living. Along with Hinata, her darling husband and several members of the clan were there as well, watching over her. She stroked her daughter's hair. Hinata was such a good girl, how she hated having to leave her. Hinata-chan? She whispered. Yes, Mama? Hinata-chan, my darling, do you know Mama loves you? Yes, and I love you, Mama. Hana smiled and hugged her daughter with all her remaining strength. Hinata-chan, Mama is going to be leaving you soon. With those words, the others in the room began to murmur. Hiyashi remained rigid and silent, his eyes locked onto the scene before him. Hinata squirmed and pressed herself against her mother's chest. Are you going to die, Mama? Yes, she breathed. Yes, I am afraid I am. I don't want to, but I fear there is no choice. Please don't die, Mama. Hinata wailed and began to cry. Oh my darling, I would stay with you forever if I could. But Kami follows his own plans and he has decided that my time on earth is at an end. Be brave, my precious child, and watch out for your little sister. Know that even after I am gone I will always be with you in your heart. I'll be brave, Mama. Good, my darling, now please let me rest for a little bit. She looked up at the others. I'd like everyone but my husband to leave, please. Taking Hinata with them, they slowly filed out, leaving the two of them alone. Hiyashi sat down on the edge of the bed and gently took his wife's hand into his. My darling, he spoke with a rare tenderness. Hiyashi, my love, my husband, there are things we must speak of before it is too late. As you say, my wife, he answered solemnly. I am here and I am listening. Hiyashi, she looked up pleadingly. Please, when I am gone, be gentle with our girls, be a kind and loving father to them. I promise you, Hana, that I will be a responsible parent and that I will see both of our daughters are worthy of our clan's main branch. That is not what I asked you, she said weakly. Hiyashi, be kind and loving to them, just as you were to me. I want you to smile and laugh as you did when we were younger. I've seen you change, Hiyashi. When your father died and you became clan head, you put on a mask for others. You became the proper and serious man you thought you needed to be, but when you were in private you still used to smile and laugh. But when Minato and Hizashi died, I watched as the mask slowly became your true face. Now I fear that when I am gone you will stop smiling and laughing altogether and become the man you once only pretended to be. The solemn, unbending man who cares only for appearances. That would never happen, Hana, he said to her. Then why did we stand aside and let Kushina and Minato's son be cast out? Minato was your dearest friend and you know how deeply he loved her. How could we do nothing? I know that Minato loved her, Hiyashi answered. But he never married her. Had she been his wife and Naruto his heir, I would have placed the Hyuga clan in their service and given them all my protection. But she was never anything more than his mistress, no matter how he treasured her. To have publicly defended her claim would have been. He hesitated, trying to find the right word. Embarrassing? Hana offered. Undignified? Beneath us? Is our reputation worth so much more than the people who are dear to us? I did all that I could behind the scenes, Hiyashi said. Fugaku was screaming that the child be executed and Danzo wanted to make him a living weapon. I used all my influence to help the Hokage at least ensure that Minato's child survived. That was not enough. For all that Minato and Kushina meant to us, we should have done so much more. I did all that I could, Hiyashi offered weakly. Had I done any more, people might have believed we valued our friends more than we value our precious reputation. Would that be so terrible? I did what I thought best, Hana. Yes, she acknowledged, fatigue thick in her voice. And I am also to blame. I could have tried harder to convince you. But instead I accepted your decision, and in so doing we betrayed Minato, the man who gave his life to save all of us. What would he say, Hiyashi, if he could see what we have done? Do you imagine he would understand? No, I suppose he would not, Hiyashi admitted sadly. Hana took a long shuddering breath. Hiyashi, my time runs short. I have a last request to make of you, my husband. My deathbed request. Will you promise to fulfill it no matter what it is? Even if it embarrasses the clan? I cannot promise that until I know what the request is. No, I want your promise first. Hiyashi, if you ever truly loved me, then promise me you will do this last thing for me. Grant me your promise and let me pass on with a little bit of peace. Please Hiyashi, for the love you bear for me. He looked down at his frail wife, so pale and fragile. He remembered when she was younger and they were courting. She'd been so full of life then. Whenever she would look at him she would smile and he would see joy there in her eyes. She hadn't cared about marrying the Hyuga heir. She had simply and honestly loved him. And he had always loved her. Very well, my love, he gently squeezed her hand. If this will bring you comfort, then I will not deny you whatever you may ask. I give you my most sacred and solemn promise. Whatever your wish I will carry it out. A brittle smile came to her lips. Thank you Hiyashi-kun. Hearing you say that is a great comfort to me. Then tell me Hana-chan, he spoke tenderly. What is your wish? Please send Kushina a marriage contract, offering to betroth Hinata to her son Naruto. The speakerphone on his desk buzzed and was followed by the voice of one of his secretaries. Hokage-sama, Uchiha Fugaku is here as you requested. Thank you, Sarutobi replied. Send him in please. The door to his office opened and in walked Fugaku, clan head of the Uchiha, military police commissioner, member of the council, an eager candidate to succeed him to the position of Hokage. A very shrewd and dangerous man with a great deal of political power in the village. At the last council meeting the man had caught completely off guard with a request for a hand's mission to Suna. Because sending one's ninja into another village could be viewed as an act of war, the 5 great villages had come to an unspoken understanding. If a foreign ninja was taken captive within the bounds of a ninja village, his home village could simply declare that he had acted completely on his own, thus washing their hands of him, and allowing his captors to do as they pleased with him. This protected the villages, and put their ninja in a hopeless position if captured. It was a dirty little game, but one all the villages played against each other. Fugaku's sudden request and the strong support he received had been quite troubling. It had been done as an obvious show of strength of Fugaku's part. In the end Sarutobi, seeing he could not win the council to his viewpoint, simply refused the request and ended the meeting. The council and the clans wielded great power in Konoha, but only the Hokage could order a hand's mission. But though Sarutobi had denied the request, the way he had been forced to do it felt like a defeat. Whether or not Fugaku could muster the same support with Hyuga Hiyashi there to oppose him was unknown. But it was now clear to Sarutobi that the man was getting ready to start openly opposing more of his policies. If it was at all possible, he needed to try and rein the man in. Fugaku stood before Sarutobi's desk and offered him what certainly looked like a friendly bow. How may I help you, Hokage-sama? I am curious, Fugaku, Sarutobi said in a clear voice. Why were you so adamant that we carry out a hand's mission in an allied village? Whether we succeeded or failed, we would have risked damaging the trust between us and Suna. I have always found the idea of ninja villages, trusting one another, a strange one. By our very natures, ninja are a secret and deceptive lot. I would prefer to rely on our own strength rather than on paper alliances. Sarutobi grunted unhappily. The alliance with Suna has helped bring much greater stability to Konoha since the war. Is it the alliance the cause of that? Fugaku inquired. Or is it the fact we defeated the forces of Iwa, Suna, and aim proving to the other village our real strength? Our strength is not as great as it once was, Sarutobi reminded him. At those words a slight flash of anger played across his features. Yes, because of the Kyuubi's attack and losses we suffered. For Fugaku, the memory of that night was one of personal loss. Several Uchiha had died fighting to delay the Kyuubi. I never made any secret of what I thought should have been done with the Kyuubi following the Yondaimi's noble sacrifice. There was no Kyuubi, Sarutobi reminded him sharply. There was only Uzumaki Naruto, a newborn you would have murdered in his crib. Fugaku was unmoved by the image. One death to guarantee the Kyuubi could never again threaten this village. To have spared him was dangerous. But to have actually allowed him to leave and serve another village? That was reckless, bordering on criminal. Sarutobi looked at him coldly. Fugaku wasn't going to be reined in, he seemed to be looking for confrontations. Do you wish to accuse me of something, Fugaku? Fugaku bowed his head. Of course not, Hokage-sama. After all, we all know that the great professor never made a mistake. I do not recall ever making such a claim. Any man who honestly believes he has never made a mistake is a true fool. I have made mistakes, but I do not believe sparing Naruto or permitting him to depart with his mother to have been such. I believe they were the best options given the circumstances. Then we remain in disagreement. Because of the compassion shown, another village has the potential power of the Kyuubi at its disposal. Had I been listened to, this danger would not exist. I do not feel we are in any immediate danger from Naruto or from Suna. And if you are wrong, Hokage-sama? Or if the situation changes in the future? What then? If I should consider Naruto as a genuine threat of this village, I will act accordingly. But it is my judgment that not only is he not a threat, but the mission you suggested would only cause this village harm, no matter what the result. Sarutobi deliberately hardened his tone. I trust you will not try to circumvent my order and arrange a hands mission yourself? Of course not, Fugaku replied. That would be treason. I thank you for your reassurance, Sarutobi said. You know, Hokage-sama, there was another matter relating to this subject I wanted to bring to your attention. Sarutobi grimaced. Whenever Fugaku sprung a surprise, it tended to be bad. What is it? It's the little matter of the Namikaze estates and fortune that are currently being held in trust by the village. The sum total of which is worth, I believe, about 250 million ryu. Not to mention the value of the scrolls that are locked away there. Sarutobi turned a steely eye to him. So this is the next way he intends to challenge me. What about them? Holding a property in trust implies that it will eventually be claimed by the proper owner. But given the fact the Namikaze clan is extinct, that wouldn't seem to be the case. The Namikaze bloodline has most definitely not been extinguished. And yet the Namikaze family line has been. If there are no legitimate heirs, I believe the village should seize the properties and do what we think best with them. There is still one potential heir, Sarutobi said coldly. Fugaku grinned. Really? I was not aware of anyone. Who is this person who is to inherit the greatest fortune not only in Konoha but in all of Fire Country? Do not play games with me, Fugaku. We both know Naruto could inherit one day. No, Hokage-sama, I know no such thing. Uzumaki Naruto may be many things, but he will never be a Namikaze. And I say it is at least possible, and so the properties must remain in trust. Then we are in disagreement. I should warn you, Hokage-sama, I will bring this matter up at the next council meeting. You are free to do so, though perhaps I should warn you that Hiashi has informed me of something that might affect Naruto's status within the village. What could Hiashi possibly do that could have any effect whatsoever on that? Sarutobi had a small smile. He liked being the one to spring the surprise for a change. To know that, I fear you will have to wait until the next council meeting. Though I suppose you could ask Hiashi directly. Sarutobi saw the man's mouth twist in distaste at the image of his pleading for information from his greatest rival. I think I will wait, though I doubt whatever it is will be of any importance. You might be very surprised. Sarutobi thought. Kushina had been taken by surprise by the arrival of a packet from Konoha. Her surprise only increased when she saw who it was from. Her first instinct was to throw it away unopened, rather like a spiteful child. But she knew the Hyuga would not send a message to her for no reason. And she had to confess she was a little curious what they Hyugas could want after all this time. So taking the packet into her bedroom, she opened it and looked at the documents and the letter inside. She also looked at the photograph that had been included. Now what is this about? The photo piqued her interest and she looked closer at the documents. There were two of them. They were two copies of the same form, both bearing the signature of Hyuga Hiashi and the seal of his clan. Across the top of the forms were the words, marriage contract. She did a double take. What do you think they're all talking about? Michio asked. As soon as they'd returned from training, his aunt Kushina had called in his dad and all the other adults except for his mom. Don't know, Naruto said. But it must be important, they've been in there a whole hour. He looked to where Gaara was. What do you think? I have no idea, Gaara said. But since they are all talking, it really must be important. Especially since they've used a silencing jutsu. Naruto looked upset by that. I don't like that. We're all family, we shouldn't have secrets. Gaara looked at him a bit glumly. There are always secrets. Well, we are ninja after all, Michio said. The door to Kushina's bedroom opened and she popped her head out. Naru-kun, come in here please. Michio looked at his cousin in surprise. What did you do? I didn't do anything. Then why are you in trouble? No one is in any trouble, Kushina said in a friendly tone. We just need to have a word with you, son. Naruto gulped nervously and slowly walked into the room. Kushina shut the door and all sounds were again swallowed up. Naruto had been in his mom's room plenty of times, of course. But this was the very first time he could remember everyone else being in it too. His mom, his uncle, and his grand-uncle were all sitting on the edge of her bed smiling down at him. For some reason they sort of reminded him of a tribunal about to pass judgment. Kakashi, Tsunade, and Shizune were all seated in chair in a little semi-circle between him and the door. He noticed they were all looking at him with a great deal of intensity. Naruto began. Whatever I did, I'm sorry. You haven't done anything, Naruto-kun, his mom said. Then why am I the only one in here? It's because you're the only one about to have a ball and chain attached to you, Kakashi said pleasantly. A ball and chain? Naruto said, freaking out. He's joking, Kushina said, trying to calm him down. No, I'm not, Kakashi said. You're not helping. Tsunade growled at him. Naruto, come here. Kushina patted her lap. Naruto obediently came over and climbed onto her lap. He was starting to get a little big for this, but she didn't mind and put her arms around her son. Naruto-kun, you know how I've told you there are important things that I will tell you when you get older? Yeah, secrets, he said unhappily. Why do we have to keep secrets from each other? Every family has some secrets, Naruto, Saishu said. But a ninja clan can keep whole closets full of them. But why, grand-uncle? Aren't we supposed to love and trust each other? Keeping a secret doesn't have to mean we don't love and trust the other person, Naruto, Saishu explained. But it's a basic truth that the fewer people who know a secret the better. If a person doesn't need to know it, then you shouldn't tell them. Even if you trust them completely. And sometimes it's just easier not to mention certain things, Kakashi said. Naruto nodded in some understanding. You mean like with you and your books, Kakashi-Nisan? Kushina flicked a look in Kakashi's direction. What books? He's talking about some of my training manuals, Kakashi answered swiftly and sent Naruto a pleading look. Oh, yeah, training manuals, Naruto nodded vigorously. Kushina glanced at Naruto and back at Kakashi. Well, this isn't suspicious. She decided not to worry about it. There were more important issues at hand. Well, in any case, Naruto, something very important has happened today that may affect your future. It may not make too much sense now, but it will one day. Naruto knew he was born in Konoha and that his father died facing the Kyuubi. Kushina had told him that she had loved him with all of her heart and that he had loved her and that they had both wanted him more than anything. He also knew that his father had been a powerful ninja and the member of a clan. Kakashi and Tsunade both told him stories about his father with the details all carefully edited. And oh yes, he knew that they had been married. His mom seemed to make a really big deal about that. That was all he knew about his father. That he was the sole heir to the Yondaime's legacy and one of the world's greatest fortunes was a carefully guarded secret. As was what lay sleeping inside his body. Wait, aren't you going to tell me some of these secrets? She smiled sadly and stroked his cheek. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but you're not ready yet. When will I be ready? He whined. He knew he was old enough already and he was impatient to know more. Kushina grinned at him. I'll tell you everything the day I give you your katana. Rather than please him, that made him groan. Flashback. Kasen. Yes, Naruto-kun? I don't want to use a regular sword anymore. I want a katana like yours and Uncle Shinzo's and granduncle's. I'm afraid you can't have one yet, she told him with an amused tone. Why not? Because you're not ready. When will I be ready? When I say you are. Kushina told him with a laugh. And no matter how much he whined or complained or pleaded, her answer never changed. Shouldn't we tell him the reason we actually brought him in here? Shinzo said. Kushina smiled. From behind her back she produced a portrait picture. It was of a little girl around Naruto's age. She was dressed in a formal kimono with her hair done up. She had pale lavender eyes without pupils and was staring solemnly. Her mouth was a flat line. Naruto, tell me what you think of this picture. He took the picture and stared at it for a moment. I think she's pretty, but she looks really sad. Who is she, mom? Her name is Hyuga Hinata, a member of the Hyuga clan, one of the most powerful and influential in Konoha. She is the eldest daughter of Hyuga Hiyashi and Hyuga Hana, two people who I counted as dear friends but who did not try to help me when I needed their help most. The reason she looks so sad is because I am afraid her mother passed away recently. That's awful, Naruto said sympathetically. Yes, I think so too, Kushina said sadly. Anyway, before her mother died she asked her husband for a last request. It seems she really was a good friend after all, but hadn't been strong enough when the time came. She wrote me a letter telling me how she always regretted that and how she hoped she could make up for it by offering you a betrothal to her daughter Hinata. Her wish was to bind our two families together and to help you get what is rightfully yours one day. What do you mean what's rightfully mine? Kushina smiled. I'll explain when you get your katana. He groaned. What matters is that a connection to Hyuga would be immensely helpful to you. I have decided to accept the offer, but son, I will never force you to take a spouse you don't want. The final decision will be yours. If you don't like her, or if you don't want her for any reason, you can cancel the contract prior to the final ceremony. But I will accept on your behalf for right now. This means that she will be coming here for a betrothal ceremony. Of course the final ceremony won't be until you both come of age and are 16. So you have plenty of time to decide. Kushina looked at her son hopefully. So what do you think? Sure mom, that's fine. He answered easily. Really? Kushina said in relief. She'd been expecting him to freak out at the idea that this little girl was being picked out for him as his future wife. I'm glad you're so accepting of all this. Well, if you think it's a good idea then I'm sure it is Kasen. But I do have two questions. What honey? Well, what's a betrothal and what's a spouse? Damn it, I knew it was too easy. Well Naru-kun, a betrothal is a promise to marry, and a spouse is just another word for husband or wife. Naruto stared at her blankly. I don't get it. That girl in that picture Naruto? Kakashi spoke determined to clear things up. You're going to marry her when you turn 16. Say what? And now let the freaking out begin, Kushina thought wearily. Thank a bunch Kakashi. After finally getting her son calmed down, Kushina decided she would be better off talking to him alone after all. So she had everyone leave so that she could try and explain things to her son. But why'd I have to marry her mom? Kushina tried to seem reassuring and gently patted his shoulders. You don't honey. Like I said, I would never force you into a marriage. I married for love, and I want you to as well. The marriage contract is not absolutely binding. It can be cancelled up until the day of the wedding. But then why do I have to agree to this at all? Because if we don't the offer will be rescinded, she explained. Naruto-kun, marrying into Hyuga would have some major advantages for you. Especially in Konoha. Why would I care about that? He asked. I don't want anything to do with that place. Kushina frowned at the unexpected roadblock. I suppose I should have expected that. I've made it a point to instill him with pride in his Uzumaki heritage while he still doesn't know a thing about Namikaze. Naru-kun, you have my blood in you and are an Uzumaki. But you also have your father's blood in your veins and so are a part of his clan as well. One day, when you are older, I hope to see you take your rightful place as your father's heir. That will mean returning to the place of your birth, Konoha. Naruto looked at him mother with a surprised expression. But I don't want to. I'm an Uzumaki, I don't want to be part of my dad's clan. But son, your father's clan was a very powerful and important one. And there would be a very high place for you in it. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest and got a muley look on his face. So what? I'm the Uzumaki clan heir. Someday I'll be the clan head. There's no way I could do better than that. Kushina blinked. It was true that her son was Namikaze clan heir. She was clan head and he was her biological son. Technically Gaara was her oldest son, but he was adopted. Since he did not have Uzumaki blood that disqualified him. Naruto had been designated heir simply for convenience, but she had always planned that he would take back what was rightfully his. And to do that he had to return to Konoha and be recognized as a Namikaze. That would become much easier if he were married to a member of Hyuga. If that clan considered him worthy of a blood tie, then all the other clans would look at her son very differently. She'd assumed the difficulty would be in convincing the people of Konoha her son should inherit his father's legacy. She'd never thought convincing Naruto would be a problem. I'll tell you what son, Kushina said warily. Why don't you hold off on deciding what clan you want to be a part of until after I tell you about your father? Oh, okay. It won't matter, I'm going to stay an Uzumaki no matter what. Naruto said stubbornly. Kushina sighed. Well, just on the off chance you change your mind over the next 9 years, this alliance could really help you. So for the time being I'm going to accept, and you are going to at the very least be betrothed to this girl. As to what happens after that, we'll see. Naruto kept a stubborn look on his face but nodded. His mom wasn't saying he would have to marry this girl or move to Konoha. So long as the final choice was his, he figured things would be fine. The next morning, as the other boys were busy with sword and taijutsu practice with Shinzo, Naruto was being dragged off to the tower with his mom. "Why do you have to go talk to the cage about this?" Naruto asked nervously as they entered the Tower of Wind. His mom smiled at him mischievously. "We have to meet with the cage to inform him of a possible marriage between one of his clan heirs and the clan heir of a renowned foreign clan. For some odd reason, cages like to be told about things like that ahead of time. Besides, we need to arrange permission for the betrothal party to come here." "But why do I have to come along?" Naruto whined. Gaara had told him all sorts of stories about what a cold, harsh man the cage was. In truth, he made him sound downright scary. Kushina looked down at her son knowingly. "You're not scared, are you, Naru-kun?" "No way. I'm a ninja. I'm an Uzumaki. No way I'm scared of anything." "Then there's no problem, is there?" Kushina said innocently. "After all, since this is about you, the cage might want to ask you a few questions." Naruto gulped at the thought but didn't do any more complaining. At the reception area, Kushina informed one of the secretaries of her request to speak with the cage and was informed that he would meet with her shortly. Unlike her first visit here, she actually believed she would be seen soon. She was no longer a foreign supplicant begging favors but a Suna clan head and member of the Council of Wind. Kushina and her son sat down in the lobby to wait patiently. Unfortunately, the peace and quiet was disturbed by an annoying boy's voice. "Hey, look who it is. The little blonde cat." Naruto looked up and frowned. "Hey, I didn't know the circus was in town." He reached into his purse and pulled out 100 Ryu coin. "Here, make me a balloon animal." The 10-year-old boy sent Naruto a hard glare. The look got even hotter when the blonde girl standing behind him snorted a laugh. "What's that crack supposed to mean? You trying to call me a clown?" Kankuro demanded. Naruto gave him a big annoying smile. "Well, if the clown makeup fits. It's war paint cat face." Kankuro shot back. Naruto looked at him for a moment. Sorry, did you say something?" Kankuro bit down his teeth. "You know something. Everything about you just pisses me off. Watch your language," Kushina said sharply. "If I hear you talk that way around me or my son again, I'll introduce you to an old Uzumaki clan tradition." Kankuro gulped and quickly bowed to her. "I apologize, Kushina-sama." He was not used to being talked to in that tone by anyone other than his father, his sister, or his sensei. And he didn't really respect the Uzumaki at all. They were just a bunch of jumped-up foreigners who had been made his caretaker. But he knew his father would not be happy with him if Kushina complained. "Please forgive my brother," the girl with 4 short ponytails said as she stepped forward. "He's an idiot." "Hey," Kankuro snapped. "Well, what do you expect?" Tamari asked. "You're the one who goes around in public in makeup playing with dolls and thinks it looks manly." "They're not dolls," he said defensively. "I practice the ancient and honored art of puppet mastery." "Whatever," Tamari snorted. She took out a small ceremonial fan and opened it with a snap of her wrist. She put it over most of her face and turned to Naruto. "Hello, Naruto," she said in a sweet girlish voice. Both of Kushina's eyebrows suddenly jumped. Naruto, however, was not particularly impressed. "Hey Tamari, how's it going?" "Not bad, Baki says I should be ready to become a genin soon." The fan fluttered slowly in front of her face. Behind them their sensei frowned and corrected her. "What I said was that if you continued to work hard I would allow you to be tested in 6 months. The fan's flutters picked up a bit in irritation. "You're so lucky," Naruto said. "I've only started learning jutsus." "You're lying," Kankuro said. "You're still way too young to be able to do that." Naruto glared at the older boy. He looked back pleadingly at his mother. "Mom, can I?" Kushina frowned. "It's not really proper within the tower." She directed a sharp look at Kankuro. "But I don't like hearing anyone call you a liar." "Go ahead, Naruto, but don't show off too much." Eagerly he began running through some hand signs. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. Smoke immediately filled the lobby. When it cleared away, 20 clones of Naruto were surrounding Kankuro, all of them grinning at him. Baki silently reached out and touched the nearest one, confirming it really was a Kage Bushin and not a regular illusionary one. For a child of his age to perform any jutsu would be impressive, But to be able to perform an A-rank jutsu and create this many clones is truly amazing. Baki would have been even more astounded to have known Naruto had been holding back. He could have made 100. As everyone else in the lobby was staring, there was the sound of a lone pair of hands applauding. "We are most impressed." Everyone turned to see the Cage standing there in his formal white and blue robes with a veil over his face. This was extraordinarily rare. The Cage usually did not allow others to look at him while he was in the tower. "Uzumaki Naruto, you seem to be an even more gifted ninja than your mother. We will expect great things from you in the future." Naruto gulped. He, and all his clones, bowed. "Thank you Cage-sama." The Cage shifted his gaze to his son and Kankuro paled noticeably. "We are curious if there is some reason that you are in the center of this Kankuro." "No reason Cage-sama," Kankuro answered immediately. Naruto however ratted him out. "He called me a liar and said I couldn't do a jutsu." "We see," the Cage said in a neutral tone. "Is this true Kankuro?" The boy's first instinct was to lie. But he knew Baki would never let him get away with that. "Yes, it is," he answered as calmly as he could manage. The Cage shook his head slightly. "We are deeply disappointed to hear that you would call the heir to the ninth house a liar. Return home, we will administer a proper punishment later." Shaking slightly, Kankuro bowed. He also sent Naruto a look of sheer poison before leaving. A short time later, Kushina and her son were kneeling in the Cage's office as she sat behind his cloth screen. Despite having already shown himself, the Cage still preferred to maintain his customs. "Now then," the Cage said. "For what reason have you asked for this audience?" "Cage-sama," Kushina said. "My son has been offered a betrothal to the Hyuga clan of Konoha." 5 days later, Hiyashi was looking at the marriage contract that had been returned to him, along with other documents from the Cage granting him and members of his clan permission to come to Suna for the purpose of a betrothal ceremony. The copy of the marriage contract had Kushina's signature as well as the seal of the Uzumaki clan. "I honestly didn't believe she would accept the offer." He thought she had permanently turned her back on Konoha. But if she meant to have Naruto marry his eldest, she must still have an interest in the Namikaze fortune. Being on the council, he knew full well that the Namikaze estates were being held in trust and that the only possible heir was Naruto. If Naruto married Hinata, he would be duty-bound to do everything in his power to aid his son-in-law in recovering the Yondaime's legacy. A part of him was pleased at the thought, knowing it was what Minato would have wanted. But another part of him blanched at the idea of publicly proclaiming a bastard be given the greatest fortune in Fire Country along with a seat at the council and access to some of the most powerful jutsus in the world. Anyone who could master the Hiraishin no Jutsu would surely be recognized as among the greatest of ninja. Did he want that? Did he really want to help an illegitimate boy, to say nothing of the Kyuubi's Jinchuriki, achieve all that? "My personal opinion no longer matters," he finally decided. "Kushina has accepted the offer. I am honor-bound to carry it out no matter the consequences." And to Hyuga Hiyashi's credit, he would do just that. No matter the consequences. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.